So the draft hearing plan is what's on the table, and the transmittal plan is what was submitted last December. And I think tonight may come down to a choice between voting for the transmittal plan or voting for the draft hearing plan. Now, I can be corrected on that, but that's my impression. In the town plan, both versions, it says here under recreation, Tunbridge is rich in history and natural beauty with numerous recreational activities on dirt roads and trails in all parts of town. There has been a noted increase in hiking, horseback riding, road bike riding, mountain bike trail riding, and backcountry skiing and snowshoeing in town in the last 10 years by locals and visitors alike. And then it gives examples of other groups that have organized things. There's another section which I won't go over, I think I've used most of my time, that says that in the case of a class 4 road being possibly thrown up, that deference should be given to those recreational options, and the town should do its best to maintain that as a legal trail. In fact, I think even in that section, it might mention both hiking and biking and other non-motorized uses. So my recommendation when it comes to voting time is that the select board pass the transmittal version of the town plan that was submitted to them a year ago, December 10th, 2020.
Any other comments? No. It's like Groundhog Day, the same people keep showing up over and over again. Just a couple of comments. I'm not going to rehearse all the history. I mean, I hope everyone appreciates that the reason Lori Berger and Deb Mullen and Priscilla Farnham and my wife and myself and others are concerned about this is because what we're talking about in terms of bicycle traffic is not like anything your mother or your grandmother knew. We're talking about e-bicycles, we're talking about advertisement on the internet. You know, Laura Ginsburg very articulately said, you know, those who bought this property or owned these properties for decades, you know, never anticipated this kind of burden. So, you know, I don't recommend that. At the last meeting, Michael Sacker made a great fanfare of a conversation with Peter Gregory, and Peter Gregory said, we have a policy that trails should be for bicycles and other uses. I went back to some communication I had with Peter Gregory about 2 years ago. I called Peter and I said, Peter, you said this, can I do what Michael did and said, you've authorized me to repeat what you said? He says, yes, go right ahead. And when Peter Gregory first learned of this controversy, he said, for God's sakes, move the trails. And then in subsequent, and then I exchanged an email with him and he responded, I hope you can find a solution that will make all the interested parties happy. That should be the goal of this planning exercise. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. Jonathan Bicknell and I have finally been able to nail down this weekend for a tour of the Dodge farm and to show him a proposed alternative trail. And I hope he'll agree. I think it would require an investment of money, but I think it has the potential to make everybody happy, and I think that ought to be the goal. I just say that you know, the recommendations that came out of the Trails Committee with respect to the individual trails, said with respect to all those trails, there's a whole lot of work to be done, additional work to be done. We don't know whether Orchard Trail is going to be viable because of all sorts of wetlands that have to be delineated and studied, and same thing with Crossroad. And so, you know, if we can't go this alternative route of finding something that avoids the conflicts, this process is going to unfold in a long and complicated way. First, there's going to be the wetlands issues. And, you know, at least in the Orchard Road, that's going to require an individual permit and a whole process. More importantly, and I am of the view, and I know that Paul Gillis takes a different view on this, but I looked at this very carefully. I consulted 2 lawyers licensed to practice law in Vermont and know a lot about this. And my view is the trail, under the law, the select board has the authority to designate the uses of the trails, but it doesn't have the authority to maintain or repair the trails. It definitely has that discretion with respect to class 4 roads, and indeed it has that duty with respect to the highways. And what the state statute set up in effect is an old-fashioned process of cooperation. In order for a trail to be developed beyond pedestrian use and for it to be paved or graded or for construction to go forward, you have to acquire an agreement of those who want to use the trails, and the town that wishes to designate the trails, and the landowners whose lands are at risk. And I'm perfectly prepared to litigate that issue, go up to Vermont Supreme Court and vindicate my position, which I think is that the trail, that you can't do construction on my land in order to promote bicycle use without my permission. I think that's the law. And I'm happy to pursue that. But I'd rather spend the money on, frankly, on trails that people can use. I think that would be a more productive avenue. But, those are the two options that are facing us. One is we figure out a way to cooperatively try to achieve everybody's objectives, not make everybody happy. God knows, I'd rather see people bicycle down the Stratford Road, which is a very lightly traveled road, been used by bicycles for years. But we've got to find something that and I think there's an option that can make everybody happy. Alternatively, we go the other route and we go litigation, and the worst case scenario for the biking advocates is there's no bicycle access to any of these trails. My legal theory prevails. Not on Orchard Road and not on the crossroads. Because I don't think the owners of those trails are going to voluntarily say, yes, we welcome you, come in with an excavator and rip up our land. I think they're going to oppose that. So, legally, there's this, we can play a crapshoot. We can we can see who wins, or we can try to find a compromise. And I hope everyone's willing to compromise. Anyway, Jonathan and I are going to go out and take a walk on this weekend, and we'll see what happens.
What day are you gonna walk down,
I don't know. We've been watching the weather. I think we thought that there was a good chance of snow on Saturday, and more likely we go on Sunday. But we might. I think that was our tentative agreement. And then if it turned out on Friday that there's some snow on Sunday, but not on Saturday.
No. Yes, John. John, I just have a quick question about some vast problems here we have, and also, I guess, uses part of the legal trail on your land. But how do those agreements work? Is it an annual verbal agreement between you and?
Well, it's as I've said, the vast people are a joy to work with. Just on a personal level, and Andy Rogers is the current leader, and I work in the past with Baxter and Larry Trotter. If they need me, they call me. If I need them, they call me. When we bought the property, we said we would be happy to have Bass continue. Baxter presented me with the agreement. And it's an annual agreement, and it says basically, we're thank you for you're letting us use your land. Thank you very much. We'll never in a million years ever make any claim to rights in your land if you let us go on your land, and we'll cooperate with you to the nth degree. And then just to give you the complete story, Baxter said, so we can just leave it like this, or I can come back every year and give you another agreement. And I said, well, I think just being a lawyer, I'd rather do this every year. But frankly, I've never heard from him since then. So we're just like kind of a month, a year-to-year tendency. And so, I mean, I'm sure that's, he has a license, Bass has a license, and it's not been a problem.
Is it in writing, something you signed?
It's a permission slip.
Yeah, I granted them a license, permission, and I think they signed it as well, somewhere in my office.
And then improvements to the trail, like the bridge or where the actual trail crosses, say, your hayfield, are there agreements like you and Bass or both see this and you both say this works for me?
Yeah, there've been well, Yeah, we moved the trail twice. When we first bought the trail for some reason came up right by the barn and really right near the house. And so we said, well, could we move that? And so we moved it closer to the Tunbridge Stratford Road. And so, and we did that for a while. And then I can't frankly remember what precipitated it, but we agreed that it would make more sense to come up from the rocks on the Bass Trail and then into the lower pasture below the house, and then to cross the stream and go into the pasture that butts your property, and then goes up to the hayfield and on up. And that from their point of view, that had the advantage of not crossing the public road. It's entirely on pasture. So that, and then Larry Trotter came in with an enormous set of planks that he used to put the bridge. And there's also a culvert there, which they've maintained over the years. And so, you know, it's so I think we found the right location that minimizes the impact on the house and is the most useful for them. It gives them a lot of open field to use.
Good.
But I guess what I'm suggesting is, in my view, legally, when it comes to public trails, that essentially the same arrangement needs to prevail. And the reason I say that is because I don't think the town has, I think Laura has expressed the view, I think it's correct, that the trails cannot be used by bicycles unless they're improved. And they can't be improved without landowner cooperation.
No, that's not accurate, John, and that should be rebutted right there.
But feel free, but I'm explaining my legal position.
Well, I explained the minutes from the meeting where the select board here said they have no history of any restriction being made on the legal trails, and you just made a very contrary statement to that.
No, I'm not, I'm making a statement about authority to do repairs and construction and maintenance on the trails. And whether or not that can go forward without, whether that activity is within the bundle of sticks held by the landowner, or whether it's within the right of way held by the town. We've not, you know, I mean, we haven't really. Anyway, that, and I know Paul has a different position on that, but if I'm correct, the net effect is to say that you could not improve those trails for bicycle use without landowner cooperation and acquiescence, which, you know, my point of view is fine, because I'm willing to figure out a way to accommodate the bicycles, and I think others are willing to find a way to accommodate the bicycles. But what we want to do is what we did with the Bass Trail, which is find a right of way which has the least adverse impact on our property and the use and enjoyment of the house, and that works for them. And there are lots of options, and yet people have an open mind. What we don't want to see is the bite is, you know, what Deb doesn't want to see, what Lori doesn't want to see, what Priscilla doesn't want to see is bicycles going right by the house.
As they have for decades.
Not in the projected body,
Okay, we're-
not at 30 miles an
We're
hour.
kind of going in circles here, unless there's something new. I think we've had enough time. Thank you. Laura wants to speak.
I would just like, because my name was referenced in the statement, I just want to clarify what Paul Haley actually wrote verbatim about a town's ability to maintain trails. So my question to Paul was that we have a position that legal trails can only be maintained by the landowner and not the town or other groups at the town's discretion. Is this true? And Paul wrote back, the town is not obliged to do maintenance on trails, but it's not forbidden to do so. Many towns have done work, usually on an ad hoc basis, to address the related problem or curb cutoffs of trails. So that's Paul's position, that towns are allowed to do work on trails. The landowner does or does not have to be engaged in that. So that's all I have to say, so that I can clarify.
Thank you.
how many was used.
Question to the select board. So in listening, because we know that our town council has recused himself from being involved in this discussion. Is that correct?
Correct.
And I know that we're relying, at least for advice, some legal advice from Paul Gilbert.
Correct.
So my question to the select board, if you are weighing a law professor here who definitely has a vested interest in this, or you're weighing the advice, since we don't have town council on this issue, which, I mean, do you have a deference? Do you have a, what should you do as responsible town officials? If we are, I don't know if we're paying Paul Gilbert for his legal advice or not.
We haven't got a bill.
Yeah, you haven't got a billion. And hopefully it won't be too hard. And also, you know, just, and I didn't want to bring up the whole legal thing, but and, you know, we have the letter that was referenced a couple of times, and we do have a reporter covering this tonight. So when you identify yourself, if you're talking, identify yourself so that you know who's going. Is, you know, the threat of litigation. I don't think that is a way for any officials to have to make a decision under the threat of litigation. That's very unfortunate here, but I'm glad that he brought it out and he opened again, because it has been rattling around in the background for quite a while. Some people didn't see the letter that John's lawyer wrote. Other people have. There's a vast bit of knowledge. So I just think that, you know, we're treading on some pretty thin ice here, but I just think that having a full airing, and I think there's plenty of other people that want to speak tonight, so I'll be quiet.
All right.
Can I ask Laura?
Sure.
Laura, does Paul shed any light on if that's the case where either the town does maintenance or somebody the town approves of where a landowner buy into that is taken into account?
I've not asked Paul that question specifically, but the message that I have read and, you know, between the lines, but in other things that he has said, is that the goal is that it should be a collaborative effort between the town and the landowner. So you don't want the town going in and making decisions about legal trails on land that are going to have detrimental impacts. But the landowner also needs to be collaborative. So I think that's the direction that he has pointed in other areas, like the question about who decides what are the uses of the trails. His response was the landowner should have some weight in that decision, but it shouldn't just be the landowners who decide. So I think there is that balance between the two interests there.
Yes,
Is there anything in the town plan that you are now considering to vote on tonight that would stop the ongoing discussion and work around trails? Because the town plan is a guideline, is it not?
it is.
And so is there anything
I don't
that
know.
stops the discussion, should it be passed or if it isn't passed?
Well, I'll give you my recollection of past meetings. It is the reason that the town plan is a little bit purposefully vague about the use of trails is because we were gonna follow that up with an ordinance or a policy, and which will define how we want, the select board anyway, people want, whatever, the trails to be used. And so I think, in my opinion, I'm gonna vote for the town plan as presented. I don't know if that answers your
Well,
question.
no, I mean, so you do not see that there's anything in the town plan that will stop the conversations, possible collaborations and whatever's going to happen?
No, I don't,
Okay,
as long as I understand.
that's what I'm trying to
Yep.
understand.
And could I just get your name?
Ellen Hosford.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you, Betsy Geiser. Speaking as a member of the Conservation Commission, the Trails Committee, the former Ancient Roads Committee,
the Tunbridge Welcome Committee, and as a resident active in the outdoors for more than 35 years, I wish to request that the select board approve the planning commission's transmittal draft of the Tunbridge Town Plan submitted to the select board on December 10th, 2020. I strongly believe this plan should be approved without the proposed amendments to the transportation section, which are in conflict with the other sections of the plan, specifically the recreation section, and only serve to weaken the document as a whole. For more than 3 years, the Planning Commission has been working on the update to the town plan. Two Rivers Ottapuche regional planners were hired by the town of Tunbridge to help ensure a comprehensive, consistent, and clear document be created that reflects local interests and values and recognizes the importance of retaining public resources for the public good. The town plan should serve to strengthen our community and reinforce the decisions the select board must make now and in the future. It is a vision statement that builds upon past community values while enhancing the health, vitality, and overall quality of life for current and future generations. I would request that you accept the draft town plan as it was submitted in December 10th. Thank you.
Brenda,
Yeah, the only thing I want to add in is there were some changes that were under this whole investigation and listening to everybody. And that was brought to the attention of the planning commission, the trails, and that was the wetlands issue. And it's a town legal road or class 4, any of those fall under your view. And according to the last letter we got from the guy who walked that, he would like to come back after we have some ideas of what's going on, and then he'll help us with it. So I think you're gonna have to, for the sake of the town, at this point, accept your amendments in there and give us some space to have him come back after we've had a chance to try to view that and have alternatives.
so you're telling us that you think we ought to adopt the latest version,
Yes,
not the.
that there's been some changes since that all happened, some awareness that's been brought to our attention about the wetlands, and to be accountable to the town of Tunbridge. We need to take that into account.
I would just say that the transmittal document submitted on December 10th, 2020 does not go against any of that. It would still allow the select board to limit use during certain times of year, or if there are conditions that are degrading the trail. It doesn't, in my opinion, does not go against the select board making decisions about the trail.
Could
But
be
it
wrong,
keeps it
but
as a right of way, that is, these legal trails are highways, right of ways that have been in use for more than 200 years by bicycles and horses.
Wagons.
More than 200 years. They're connecting trails that connect neighborhoods. You kids with bikes can get from neighborhood to neighborhood without getting on pavement and dangerous roads to do it.
right, but we the select board, as far as I understand it, have the ability and authority to restrict or do whatever we want with the legal trail. So no matter which document we decide on.
If it's based on if you have a reason for doing it, yes.
We can do it. Yeah,
Wanted to say that I'm very interested in keeping the trails open to all non-motorized use. And I felt it when you said connecting neighborhoods. And I've ridden and run on every road in Tunbridge, and I love this town, and I love all the roads. And I really love being able to connect those neighborhoods. And for, in my world, like closing a crossroads, no, and I don't go there that much, but I know I can. And I walk my bike through if that's a compromise, but please don't close it. So.
Thank you, Jen. Anyone else? George?
George White. I would like to just stand back a little bit and say, number one, the town plan is an amazing document. I read almost the whole thing and completely surprised myself. It's a remarkable document. Regarding the trails, I reiterate that it's over 200 years of use by all of these non-motorized use, and then it became motorized and now not motorized. I think this isn't a difficult, I don't think this problem is nearly as difficult as it may seem to come to happy agreements. There's certainly, the cooperation of landowners to find workarounds for areas that are sensitive, or even, the wetlands area, I think, is a little bit of a ruse. There's hundreds of miles of trails in Vermont that cross over much more sensitive wetlands than any that exist on these town roads. And they're easily addressed with simple, easily removable temporary structures, walkways or other easy to accomplish things that would satisfy the state for working with wetlands. The real issue here is clearly traffic going through people's backyards. And we've been threatened to lose that right. We've had rights taken away or access taken away for other very popular town things. There's been just a lot of unnecessary bad blood going on around trying to solve these problems where, I think it's not that difficult to try and address issues of landowners. And of course, they should be addressed. And of course, the town has the right to maintain trails through legal trails, to keep them maintained. And if a workaround can be found from a property owner that doesn't involve any gigantic loss in elevation, say, for a bicycle, or portions of that trail being moved to busy town roads and then back to the trail, it wouldn't be that difficult to find ways to address everybody's concerns. And I, for one, gotta say, being threatened to be sued to lose my right to do something I've always done and that people have done for 200 years, that's, I'd say bring it,
Yeah, but if you lose, and the court says you're.
We're not gonna lose.
Looks like summary judgment to me.
We've got
Okay,
220 years of precedent set.
As Paul Gill is at least 100% sure of his legal position.
Okay,
He
John,
has to state it.
we will.
So as I understand it, tonight, we're really not resolving this issue. It's the way the town plan is written. You intend to have the ordinance be adopted at a future date, and it's currently left vague in order to accommodate that.
Well, no matter what, if we approve a version of the town plan, in my opinion, tonight, it doesn't end. I mean, we still have to deal with legal trails, we still should deal with other trails on private land or whatever. It's just one of those things we should do.
Yeah.
It isn't gonna end.
So with signage, road closing, rerouting, there's been a real lack of attention to these town trails over, the past 100 years. Because they haven't been getting much use. There is increased use. And I totally agree that, things need to be done. Restricting the big events or even medium-sized events, I think is a no-brainer. And, signage and a little bit more oversight over the trails. And that's all the time I leave up.
All right, anyone else?
I
Yes.
just-
I'd like to, if I could,
permits. I'm not so sure, and I know that I welcome wetlands experts coming and getting, drilling down a little bit more. I'm not sure it's been fully decided that the class 2 wetlands that exists on Orchard Road would actually need a permit to do some of the temporary things that George brings up. Anybody that's familiar with Orchard Road knows that those wet areas are not half of Orchard Road. They're not even a third of Orchard Road. They're maybe 10 to 15%. So I welcome the types of protections that will be there, and it's an ongoing discussion, even if you pass the amended town plan. But the expense, as John pointed out, the workaround could be pretty expensive. We've had other citizens, landowners who have said, this is going to cost the taxpayers of Tunbridge a lot of money. That is kind of a red herring as well. If you had to reroute a trail to satisfy one landowner, and it was going to cost a lot of money, probably it wouldn't get rerouted. Maybe the whole thing just gets shut down to everybody. Private trails have been shut down as a tactic before. I think that may happen again. And the other amendment, which I like, about encouraging private trail agreements with other private landowners. I think a private landowner that has watched this whole scenario evolve for more than a year and is wondering what's going on, is reading in the Valley News, is reading in the Randolph Herald. Dylan Kelly is covering this story again tonight. Is going to scratch their head and say, really? Why should I open up my land to private trails when the right-of-way that's existed for a lot of non-motorized uses is being closed down to certain uses? It's kind of a counter, it doesn't really make any sense.
All right, thank you, Doug. Did someone else want to speak on? the
Yeah,
computer?
Michael Saka wanted to speak.
Right. Speak up.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I just wanted to put my, I'm the commissioner for, from Tunbridge to Two Rivers Regional Commission. And I'm putting that hat on right now. And I want to encourage the select board to stay in sync with the regional plan. And I will read to you what Peter Gregory wrote about this issue in the regional plan. Two Rivers Ottaquechee Regional Commission, through its adopted regional plan and its policies, have long supported the retention of public rights of way for a variety of purposes. The most important purpose is for recreational pursuits like walking and biking, among others. And that was signed by Peter Gregory, Executive Director of Two Rivers Ottaquechee. So I just would like to encourage the select board to, and I'm not sure if we can go backward, but I think Betsy's point, I'm pretty sure that right now, the page 53, second paragraph, that does include bike riding. Is that what's in the current town plan that's being negotiated right now or being discussed? Mariah, can you answer that?
What was the question, Michael?
On page 53, second paragraph, first sentence under non-motorized use. Oh, I see. No, it did get changed. It changed from a wide range of uses to Tunbridge has 2.45 miles of legal trails, all of which are accessible to the public according to town policy. And of course, we don't know what that policy is, and some people are talking about an ordinance, which seems a little bit out of line. It seems a little heavy-handed, I guess I'll say. But anyway, so I would just encourage the, so it looks like the select board, Tunbridge Select Board is out of sync with the regional plan. And I want to point that out by the fact that you are not including other uses on page 53. That's all I have.
Hey, go ahead, John.
Given the amendments, the people who are in favor of the transmittal version versus the amended version, what is restrictive about the language that's been added? Because we haven't adopted a policy or an ordinance yet. So I'm just wondering
Well,
why it's
I have some concern that it might open, when you're just vague about recreation without defining what that means. You're opening it up to ATVs and other forms of recreation that have not been traditionally welcomed on legal trails. But I think it's important to be specific about what's allowed. It just clarifies everything, doesn't muddy the conversation. And it's, by not being specific, you will open it to other motorized uses.
So the transmittal is has clarity as far as what,
Yes,
What
it
has that?
specifically mentions all the allowed uses.
so your problem is we're making the town plan more vague.
Yes.
Laura, as far as the town plan goes, once adopted by the select board, after all the work that hearing the adoption by both the planning commission and the select board, at what point during the 7 or 8 years of the cycle, at what point could it be amended during that period without the whole, the whole process starting over?
That's a good question. I don't know if there can be minor amendments once it leaves the select board. I think the planning commission can reopen it and address only a section. Say we wanted to change the wording of one particular line. We could do that. We would have to hold a hearing and adopt it, send it to you. You'd have to hold a hearing and adopt it. But we wouldn't, the purpose of the 8-year cycle is to update maps, population numbers, businesses, the kinds of things that the state gets information about both the federal government and different state agencies on a regular basis. So like the problem with the 2017 version was that it contained out-of-date maps regarding floodplains in particular. We needed to update that because it was not showing the correct and most up-to-date information. Now we've done that. So if we wanted to do line edits, I believe the process would be the same. It would just be very minor. The hearing and send to you, do the hearing and adoption.
So for example, they said, look at the town, according to town policy, if we wanted that change to town ordinance, that one word from policy to ordinance, that's something that you just described. You would go through.
To jump in again, Laura, the town plan again is a suggestion of vision.
Right.
What you guys decide is something set in stone. We've had many, as we go through every 5 and now 8 years of revamping, there's a lot of stuff that has to catch up to what happened.
Right.
Right, there's always old language in the plan, which is why you're revising it and updating it, because things have happened that you need to currently reflect. So I think, and this is my opinion, this is not what state statute says, but my understanding would be that the town plan says one thing, it's a guidance document. If you adopt a policy and the plan says an ordinance, or vice versa, you would be okay. If the town plan didn't say that, and you adopted a policy or an ordinance, you would still be, the town plan would still be okay. So it's not gonna like make the town plan null and void if you do something that's outside of it, because it's a document that's meant to be updated and thus caught up to speed.
I think that Kevin wants to answer the question. Kevin Geiger from Two Rivers is on here.
You will know.
Thanks, folks. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. In regarding to the question by the select board there about changes after you get done, the town plan does live for another 8 years, but at any point in there, so all sorts of things can change, and the planning commission could take it up again and fiddle with one part or many parts. There's no requirement that just because it lasts 8 years, you have to wait 8 years.
Thank you.
All right, any other comments?
Just about timing, I think a lot of the concern about being pretty clear, to go back to what was a very vague policy. Although most long-term Tunbridge people knew that non-motorized uses on legal trails responsible was the unwritten policy. And then we were moving towards getting a written policy, which was recommended. Those bullet points that I pointed out before, that the Planning Commission and Trails Committee worked on for months. And they apparently, that is not going to go into the draft hearing that most likely will be approved later. I don't know. We have one vote that's been made, sort of. Is the amount of time that's gone into this, and yet it's kind of come full circle and it's really vague. And trail users are going to be going into 2022 with total vagueness. Yeah, the ordinance might come down and say, all right, ironclad, these uses are not happening in Tunbridge. Once again, we use the word outlier. No other town that I've talked to in this immediate area, and I would bet maybe in most of the state, has moved in this direction under the threat of a lawsuit and under the threat of some very popular private trails being closed off. And we see the privatization of public rights of ways around the country. No trespassing signs. The history in Vermont is shared responsible land. A lot of people don't post those trespassing signs, and they have every right to do that. John has every right to close his private trails. People have every right to say no hunting, no trespassing, no anything. Or, hey, safety zone, you can come walk on my private property. And that seems to be getting eroded more and more. And that's what's been happening during this process that I think is disturbing a lot of people. And I think by keeping it vague and kicking it down the road some more, and maybe coming up with an ordinance is very detrimental. You know, what's the bumper sticker say? Almost perfect. Well, we've been going a lot less than perfect for a little more than a year now on this issue. I don't know if some of the comments that have been made, there are a lot of other people that are not on this call, but I think it's a very important decision that's being monitored by other select boards in the area. And I'm glad that Kevin Geiger was on the call, and we'll see, because there are other areas of the regional plan that this definitely goes against.
Thanks, Josh. Anyone else would like to speak? Yeah, Brenda's looking at her clock.
Yeah, just because we have a couple more people.
Yeah.
Good night.
Yeah.
Oh, I think Kevin wants to speak again.
Yeah, since people are opining about how this comports with the regional plan or not, we don't find, Two Rivers staff don't find that this change it has any effect one way or another on compliance with the regional plan. And that the first change just says it kind of goes from a laundry list of things to a very short list of things. And the second change says the town should, which is not a shall, and that's a very important distinction, should support mixed use trail development on private lands. It does not require you to do it. It does not create a mandatory policy. It just points you in one possible direction. And so neither of those things would cause us heartburn. So I just want to make that clear. Now, other people may have other opinions, and those are their opinions, and they have a right to them.
Thank you.
All right, well, it seems like we've exhausted opinions. And I see here, according to our agenda, we're gonna vote on this a little bit later on.
Yes, so I don't know if once we ended this meeting
Yeah,
and began our select board meeting, if you wanted to move it to the top so we could just,
we might as well.
okay.
Well, unless you guys think differently. You might go this, you're on this track as well. How about you, want, you okay?
I'm on the track.
You're on the track? One line. So.
I think we need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion, what is there?
Second that motion?
What's this meeting called?
This is the, yeah, town plan hearing.
I say.
All right, so the motion's been made and seconded to end the public hearing part of our meeting. All in favor, aye? Aye.
Aye.
Nobody opposed? So now we'll start the regular
Yeah.
select board meeting.
You guys sure you don't want to do this a little longer? Or we will do it some more?
What do you want to do?
Right. Thank you very much.
Are you welcome? Thanks for coming in. So we'll,
Do we need to motion to change that, or do we just need to make a note that we're just moving the item up in the agenda?
Yeah, you just make a note.
Okay,
is it duly noted?
duly
All
noted.
right. So
Read the part.
you want to take care of John? I guess my question from before now applies, maybe, do we need to make a motion? Someone needs to make a motion,
To approve the town plan.
yeah, and then you can second it and then ask for more discussion and vote.
More discussion. So did you make a motion? I'll make a motion that we approve the town plan as it's presently written.
Now, I hate to ask this, but is there any more discussion?
Well, would you like to speak to what the reasoning behind the amendments that were made?
I would not. Would someone else like to lead me? And just to clarify, Mike, you wanted, you made the motion for the latest version of the town plan versus the, what was that word again?
Transitional.
Transmit.
What's the difference between the two?
Well, I just
What
wanted,
are the highlights of the differences?
oh, yeah, I missed all that.
I did, I'm so sorry.
Brian, do you
Real
have-
short, real short.
I don't have the previous one. If Laura, well, actually, I take that back. You have it?
I'm happy to read it out.
Okay.
No, it's okay. So there were two changes made. And the select board asked the planning commission to develop language. So on page 53, second paragraph, first sentence, under non-motorized use, the wording of the transmittal draft, which was, I termed the current wording, because the new plan has not been adopted yet. And this was prior to the select board adopting the new language about a month ago now, was that Tunbridge has 2.45 miles of legal trails, all of which can be used by the public for hiking, horseback trail riding, road bike riding, mountain bike trail riding, backcountry skiing, and snowshoeing. The new wording is that Tunbridge has 2.45 miles of legal trails, all of which are accessible to the public according to town policy. The other addition was on page 46, which is under, I believe, land use, which has a whole grouping of recommendations about trails and accessibility on land. That there should be a new recommendation added, which should be recommendation number 7, that Tunbridge should support mixed-use trail development on private land to expand access and offer additional recreational activities. And that was it. The town plan is approximately 160 pages long. So those are the two changes.
So one's more vague and one is opening it up, saying we want something different, like we want to work together. Create more.
Well, I think the consternation may lie on the page 53 change,
Yeah.
which moves the
Cuts
current
out.
wording, or the transmittal version, which outlines 6 uses. Which I'm just gonna put a thought in there, that then makes illegal a 7th use that's not listed, because we listed out 6 uses, and adds in language that says, according to town policy, which can change and be flexible over the course of any amount of time, that's who can use the trails. So it's not defining the usership in the town plan, it's pointing back to town policy, so that as policy is evolving, the town plan is staying up to date.
Thank you.
I think Betsy's a little bit for
But it's my understanding that the wording was changed so that an ordinance prohibiting uses, traditional uses on legal trails was justified, basically.
Well, you could say that, but you might not be right.
So I'm wondering if I'm right,
Yeah.
but I believe that's what it appears, the motivation for those changes was to allow, to restrict some of those uses that were listed. And I don't think that that's been the intent of the town plan for, and it's not been the intent of the uses traditionally.
Oh, John had his hand up next. No, sorry.
Yeah, just very briefly, I support what you're doing. I think you're promoting further conversation, collaboration, and trying to get to something close to a community. Yes, I think that's a good idea. Rather than trying to be definitive. I mean, I agree with Todd. This has been a terrible and destructive process. I point out, Todd, that you started this process. And I think putting this into the political realm and having these incredibly structured hearings in which people get, everything's recorded and everybody gets 2 minutes to speak. And, it's just not the way to have an intelligent conversation about coming up with productive solutions.
So I'll correct you just a little bit.
And
I know one has had just 2 minutes.
Well, I've often been cut off.
Well, you have-
With all due respect, I just don't think a formal governmental process is the way is the most productive way. to do it. So I hope some more informal conversations can ensue after the adoption of the plan. And the community can come back to you with something that is more.
All right, Brenda.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw out there, I don't think you're being vague. We have to work on collaboration and we have to, whether people think it's a red herring or not. The wetlands, it was suggested we at least look at it next year. And then when we come up with a plan to go through it, we work with them. I think as a town, we're obligated to do that. So it gives you the space to do this the right way. And gives us time to collaborate. As a person who allows or may not allow 100 acres next to the town forest being used, I'm certainly watching how this unfolds in town and seeing how agreeable it is to work with surrounding landowners and their concerns. And we certainly want to put our best foot forward, as Tunbridge can usually do.
Thank you.
So thank you for taking the time to finish this up. I feel correct.
Well, I also feel that the genius of democracy is that if we, I mean, you could have a town plan and have stuff in there that's 180 degrees different from what a planning commission really believes in, or select board, and it doesn't get thrown away, right? It might get updated during the regular process or even amended, as we heard from Laura, in the middle of that 8-year period. And I think that's true if potentially there's a town policy adopted by the select board over use of legal trails. If us 3 bums get thrown out, right, they can totally change. And same with the planning commission. So I think the spirit of the town will be reflected in the town plan and in elected officials.
So just to get to, after Laura's presentation and all of the hours that the Trails Committee and the Planning Commission, and I'm not claiming credit for all the way those things are running. I just was looking for clarity and there still is not clarity. How do you answer the Planning Commission in particular? And we had a chair of the Legal Trails who had to resign under a lot of pressure and intimidation. The people that put in these civic volunteer hours on, and it looks at this point, as far as drafting this very vague language, that almost none of their recommendations are being accepted. Just either ignored or put down the road for a further discussion. And maybe there'll be, an ordinance, and then maybe there'll be a petition, and maybe there'll be a lawsuit. I mean, it seems like getting to the nut. Actually, last August, when I brought it up about clarity, I thought that maybe the select board would look at some of the draft language and say, we can be done with this right away. I was surprised when it started to go down the lane as much as it did. So I don't know if you've had a chance to talk to Laura.
Todd, this is a town plan.
Yeah.
We can vote any way we want tonight. And next select board meeting, we can start to change it. Do you understand that part?
Oh, I can understand that.
Okay, well, that's not what you're saying.
I'm
You're
saying,
saying, you're telling me that this is written in stone. And whatever we do tonight is gonna forever ruin Tunbridge. And that's not the way it works. This is a town plan. We're suggesting something right now. Next week, we may say, ooh, we want to pave all the trail and go in a different direction.
And we do intend to have either a policy or an ordinance, and I'm looking. This is a fluid thing. This is not something that we're gonna take a piece of granite and mark in it, say this is good forever. Because I personally wanted to have a trails committee and an active trails committee to deal with legal trails, to deal with private trails, to collaborate with landowners and 10 years from now, hopefully we'll get something good from that, or less than 10 years, but you know, the point is we'll have something. Would anyone else like to speak?
I would just add that it has a real chilling effect for volunteers that have put in probably more than 100 man hours on this issue between the Trails Committee and the Planning Commission combined, once our chair got harassed enough to resign. And I'm not sure she was ever thanked for all the time and aggravation she put in to this whole process, but it has a chilling effect on volunteering for town committees and commissions, to not heed the advice over many hours of deliberation and public input.
Well, here again, if we get a policy or an ordinance from this, we're gonna go with some of the recommendations, I assume, from the committee.
It wasn't evident in the proposed ordinance that you.
Proposed ordinance. We can draft, that's a draft proposed ordinance, we can make that 180 degrees different next week if we want to, or if we, whatever, so just, I mean, don't. Oh man, I'm so discouraged now, but just don't think that this is the end of the process, because it's not.
Oh, can I say something?
Sure.
So, I mean, I've been the chair of the planning commission for 2.5 years now. Has this past year been like swimming in a tropical ocean, which I frequently dream about? No. But has it been like incredible suffering and pain? No. I mean, I signed up for my role as a public servant, knowing that there was going to be hard conversations to have. I work for the state. I took a state job because you have hard conversations with constituents that don't agree with you. But the point is to do the work to inform decision making. So I think I would feel mildly frustrated if the select board was like, well, that's a load of hooey that the planning commission sent us and just totally did your own thing. But that's not my expectation. My expectation is we did all this work and you're going to take the time to thoughtfully consider the recommendations that we've made. None of this happens overnight. That's how democracy works, with slow moving votes. And that's okay. Like from my perspective, the point that we've gotten to is perfectly fine. We've had lots of opportunity for conversation, for dialogue, for input, for opinions. Everybody's learned a million more things about legal trails than anybody probably ever thought they wanted to know. And the town is better informed for it. So yeah, it's been a long process, but that doesn't mean I'm gonna like throw my hands up and quit. you know, I put it in your good hands to make decisions and ask us questions back for next steps. And for this to be iterative, for the town to reach the best decision and point of operation that it can for the moment, and it's probably gonna change over time, and that's how it's supposed to work. So I don't personally feel discouraged. Am I glad we're not having a meeting in December? Yeah, but, you know, we'll be back at it in January with a new member, with the Legal Trails Committee, talking about trails. So it'll be an ongoing discussion that I look forward to.
All right, thank you, and thank you for your service. I don't see any other hands up.
Well, one last thing, Betsy, I appreciate what you said about connecting neighborhoods. And I think if you look at the town plan as we're about to vote on it, and say the Falls Hill Real Trail, it's an ancient road, it's, at the moment though, it's, you know, the landowner wants to throw it up. It's a dead end. And so what we're saying in the town plan, which I think we can all get behind, is how do you work with, say, two landowners so that neighborhoods are connected? Because one landowner at the very end of that trail can say, nobody's going through my land. And so I think going forward, what we're trying to figure out is how is that collaboration in town so that with, you know, public access combined with private approval of access, you can connect neighborhood to neighborhood.
Thank you. You calling the question? Yes, I think we should. Yes, I would like to have a vote. All in favor of Mike's motion and John's second, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. And just to reiterate, we're gonna continue this thing. I want more questions asked and answered from Paul Gillis and maybe others, and more input from the public, and we'll keep going on this trails thing. And the fellow from the state, whoever it was, wanted to look at the trails again in the spring, to look at the possible class 2 and 3 wetlands or whatever. I think we probably will have a mud season ban, especially, and then get some input from the state. And then maybe we'll make another decision after that on what can be used. So that's my thought. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we're done with the legal trail stuff tonight. So I'm planning commission stuff.
Did Kevin Geiger hear the vote?
He didn't, he's already off.
No,
Oh, no, he says he's on there. He's right there. Sorry, there's so many people.
I'm still here. I'm a town moderator, so I'm used to these things just going.
Okay, okay, so you heard it all, perfect. Could we also change our road report till the end as well, please?
Sure.
Thank
What?
you. The road
I've
report.
been waiting all night.
No, you're gonna wait longer.
Rodney's coming in later.
Yeah,
Because they do have, person from Two Rivers here.
yeah, and I also have somebody who had a 6:15, so let's see. Megan, are you still on?
She's probably fled.
Done with the trails.
Yeah.
Otherwise, different. Thank you all.
Have a nice day. Take care, John. So Megan gone?
I don't know. Megan, if you're on, you're up. You're on, you're muted if you are on. I'd say no.
Probably watching some later.
I know, well, she had to go to South Royalton and she was gonna be on there.
Oh, she comes back later.
Okay.
Send me all of
Yeah, exactly.
You wanna go and get it?
Yes.
that.
Yeah. Step forward so you can see.
Okay. Here to talk about town hall lighting again. It's been a while since we visited this subject. You know, Matthew?
Yep, you can sit, you can stand.
Either way, that's it.
So we got 20,
We got 12, we got 13 lights that's got that one there down here, not including the kitchen. In this building. It was wanting to do some modernizing, some upgrading. And she asked me to look into some stuff, which we've been doing over the summer. Purchased the material a couple of times just to get a feel for it. There's 13 lights here. And but each light is under each one of these fixtures, there's two holes. There's one hole for one set of switches and another hole on the other end of the fixture for another set of switches, which is on that wall.
And that's what we talked about last time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
4 tubes in it, and then 2 of the lamps are controlled, two of the bulbs are controlled by one switch and 2 of the bulbs controlled by the. Long story short, what we've talked about doing is taking these lights out, putting 5-inch cans, recessed cans up in with LED lighting.
And that spread out.
Yeah, pretty good spread. And the other half, one half would be normal, regular, cool white lighting. And then the other half should either be the same cool white lighting that's dimmable. And we have also wanted to research the ability to have the bulbs can change color as well for people having events downstairs here. And
The main thing is that it's dimmable. And you could turn on one set of the two to have just your regular medium bright light, or you could turn on both and have just full on white light or like soft light. And then, but then you could also turn on the other switch that would make it all dimmable.
What do you mean by half? I mean, there's.
So
three bulbs.
in every fixture,
Yeah.
one switch turns on 2 bulbs, another switch turns on the other 2 bulbs. See how
But
it
in
makes sense?
in your new proposal, you
Yes.
said half, or you said that.
Oh, well, half of each. So, yeah, half would be, yeah, that doesn't make sense. You're right. So one of the 2 of each one. So one fixture, one recessed can for each overhead light would
So
be
there's
on
going
one
to be
switch.
2 cans next to each other?
There's 2 holes. We took this one down.
Yeah.
That one. And there's 2 holes. There's like one over here and one over here.
So
So,
they have 2 cans, 2 cans, 2 cans.
Exactly.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay.
yes, sorry.
all your nose.
Yeah.
If the Wi-Fi was better in here, you could also offer with your phone to change the colors of half of these lights.
So I could be home and.
Yeah.
use my-
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah.
We'll give you the code. But with or without Wi-Fi, you can run them on a switch on the wall.
Yeah, yeah.
But with Wi-Fi, you could do more fun things. And I mean, the Wi-Fi isn't that great in here, right? Or is it?
It's currently non-existent.
Yeah, which is something that I think could also be on the list of good things for the town, to be able to extend it. It wouldn't take that much
We
to
talked
extend
about
it.
it, we talked about also having this as a designated disaster, not a
Yeah.
disaster area,
We need
but
it.
what do you call
Emergency shelter, yeah,
So
yeah,
we
so
need that,
that's,
yeah.
right,
It's a voting place, so it needs good Wi-Fi.
right.
It would also have
And it has a phone line.
It does.
So-
offering the ability to rent this out as more of a conference center for other people, because it'd be smaller, things they need Wi-Fi for, Zoom meetings or whatever, however this whole thing's gonna play out.
Right?
So we came initially looking at the lighting, but we noticed a weak spot with Wi-Fi as well. So this could be changed, this lighting could be changed if we want, and then that other one bulb that's in that stairwell would also be part of what we would be doing as well. It would be dimmable.
Have you got to the point where you might know what the cost would be?
We're somewhere around 2,200.
Yeah.
Conservative.
We feel like we wouldn't go over that. And so the estimates that I say we, but Matthew did the work on that, getting estimates from a couple lighting houses.
Yeah.
And then we also looked at like Home Depot fixtures too and stuff, and so that was closer to like summer, fall, and probably it's a little higher than what it was then. But yeah.
We priced them out with the Vermont Efficiency Program. So half of the fixtures that we looked at were under the Vermont Efficiency Program, even though all of them are high efficiency. So that was pricing through that. The lighting houses were somewhere up in the $5,000 and $6,000 range for the lighting houses. We would also be changing 2 of the switches, which would be their modern switches. It's another thing in this building is a lot of the stuff is old.
Yeah.
But the modern switches wouldn't need the neutral in which they don't have it because they use half of the neutrals for hot from our research. So here we've got the December 13th select board meeting, what we're asking for doing the project, what we say we can do for it. It's not including the painting. I don't think when we look under there that the paint was any different than it was here, so I don't think the ceiling's been painted since these pictures went up. So you wouldn't notice that too much.
Oh, just to be clear, there are existing holes there at the moment, so if these came down, essentially the whole ceiling is smooth, there's nothing sticking down.
That's what it looked like. We only took one fixture down so far.
Okay.
And there were 2 holes and no cans in the holes, just holes.
Right.
So we would have to put the cans in and that's where.
Right, so
Matthew
it's rock
comes in.
ceiling essentially, so there's room to put.
There is.
Okay.
Yeah, there was space up there.
There is. So,
Matthew's was an electrician. Yay.
5-inch cans. And like I said, we tried pricing through the garage efficiency program as well. And the town might be able to get $5 a piece back from Vermont Efficiency if they submitted the correct paperwork.
Yeah.
There you go.
And I have decided not to do New Year's Eve shindig, as you may know. So,
I didn't know that.
you know, yeah, now you do. So I had all kinds of great ideas of how to make it happen, but it's just not time yet. So
The
anyway,
others are still.
What's that?
The others are planned.
well, yeah, they were all planned.
They're on.
So I'm like
They
canceling them
haven't
one
been
at
canceled.
yeah, I'm canceling them one at a time at this point.
Yes.
They're probably all gonna be canceled. Yeah, I already have the party crashers for next New Year's Eve, so.
With lights, right? Yeah.
If you decided to do the ones in the kitchen, that would be another, there's 4 fixtures in there right now, so that, whatever we found, we'll put in there. If you guys wanted the recessed cans in the kitchen as well.
Yeah.
Gives a nice smooth look to the
Could you
ceiling.
add that to the estimate, or I mean, or have those, just because I could see if you're
About the ring lights.
mood lighting here, right, and then have
Yeah.
blasting lights in the kitchen.
Right, it would be nice to just do the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, what would you need from us? Do you need an itemized thing
How much
or?
more you think?
I'm sorry,
How much more would it be to do the kitchen?
what do you think?
To just to throw it out there, it could possibly be 8 lights, 8 cans. So I'd say probably another 4, maybe $500 tops.
Okay, so you're
Still
talking,
under 3,
Yeah.
you're talking under 3 for everything.
yeah.
And that's just the cost of materials and that's gonna run his time, is that it? Or-
Okay.
That's,
Okay.
that's where
That's
we're
pretty
at.
generous.
Send up to you.
Yeah.
What to do.
You know,
And when would you like this to happen?
And whatever it takes for you guys to make a decision, and then, it would take us just a few days to get the pictures together, and I could do them and, come right down and bang a few hours out here and there.
So,
Probably be a couple of weeks before we would be done with it. If we did it, and we'd have to buy, there's a couple of tools we have to get for, getting the holes correct as well.
Yeah.
And,
would you be able to do the work, like bang a couple out and then leave it all intact and pretty for the meeting that's happening that night? And
Yeah.
then do a few more, that kind of thing, so it could still be,
yeah,
the
we're
room
not
could
gonna,
still be in use.
it's not gonna be full of charts down right now.
Yeah, right.
Just do one fixture at a time.
Yeah,
We know where our breakers are now. We've done a lot of footwork here already, hours and hours of it. We tried to come up with a plan to just put little sconces on the walls. It was problematic,
yeah,
but it could have been done. It's just the same, the price was about the same to do, get rid of these little fixtures. They've been here, I think, since '06, I think, with some of the dates on them.
Yeah.
there you go.
No, I was just asking also because of budgeting, so we either have to find $3,000 that wasn't budgeted going forward
Yeah, we'll have to-
next fiscal year, sorry, July 1st,
We'll have to go through and see if
Yeah, I just looked
we
at
can
it.
steal it somewhere.
Right.
So we have a budget for town hall affairs,
Yeah.
and I don't remember,
So we didn't use much of it.
no,
I ain't
I
done
just looked at it
nothing.
today, and all that stuff's in the truck.
You got a budget,
Yeah.
girl?
Do we have any left over from?
The budget status report.
Yep.
But I just gotta remember.
If I die before then, I'll have to retract my offer. If I die before you get the money together, I'll have to.
You're sticking with us, Maggie, come on.
I don't plan on going anywhere.
The town hall maintenance.
Town hall.
It's surplus, it's over $3,000, right?
I can't see it. No, I'll do it.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And then at some point, I'd love to talk about the sound down here. I don't know much about that, but maybe there's somebody who can admit that, do something.
Right.
You know, getting it. And just get it out and there's a crowd.
Right there.
Yeah, he's more about, I asked him about it, he's more about, making
Yeah,
people
well,
sound
yeah.
good. not
No, no,
dead,
no,
or
it's
sound-
fine.
You know,
Right.
it's a different, yeah.
Oh, they say a tree.
Run into people like, I'm really good at that.
Yeah, right, exactly.
So we have to-
I can make you sound like you're not even there.
Janet,
Yes,
I'm going to get my quarterly to you by Thursday, a
okay,
day late.
sounds good.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Jenny, you might want to hang out
Right.
a little bit
Or,
longer.
you know, we have a surplus too.
Sarah has to.
So potentially a town meeting is voted
Yeah.
a little bit of that.
Michael,
What's that?
are you ready for Sarah?
Are we, not to rush you? Brenda's wanting me to rush you.
I just, yeah,
We're only 15 minutes late.
she's gonna drive back.
Yeah, we're talking about. We'll get along.
Well, we'll get back to you when we found the money, find the money,
Great.
or we say it'll have to be after July 1st.
Okay, let me know.
Or after town meeting. There's a surplus.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do we get an extra day on TQ?
Yes.
Okay, just because I wanted to.
It's always a soft deadline, you know
Right.
that. But yes, thank you for asking.
So Sarah Wright is here from Two Rivers.
Yep.
And I asked her to come just briefly to fill us in on the ARPA grant. And the ARPA grant has a fair amount of money that's already coming into our treasury. But there's certain guidelines and boundaries for us to stick with it. She's gonna help us. And one of the projects is this building. So we might be on the same page with some of the stuff. Many things. Thank you. Where would you like me to be?
It's fine.
So thanks so much for the presentation and the introduction, Brenda. So my name is Sarah Raitt. I work as a regional planner with Two Rivers Peachtree Regional Commission, and I'm the designated ARPA liaison for our office. So my responsibility is to interface with towns, help them work through any eligibility questions that they might have pertaining to ARPA, and also to support towns if they are engaging in public. I'm available to help facilitate those kinds of community meetings and help sort of for those conversations, public conversations around this issue. So I've given you a handout with some information. I'm just going to run through it briefly. Those of you who are familiar with ARPA are aware that it is fairly weighty, like any federal piece of legislation. And so I'm just giving a very sort of broad overview this evening and really you know, when it comes to specific project ideas, that's when we can dig down and figure out, okay, is this really eligible according to the regulations? So at least that's what we know now. So as y'all are aware, the money through ARPA is coming in sort of two tranches, right? The first tranche came in August and September of this year. The next half of it, the next 50% is coming in August, September of 2022. And as you know, your total allocation is going to be close to $400,000. Now, for the most part,
This is county ARPA, so Orange County gets it, or is it your
so
passion basin?
originally, ARPA was intended to give money both to towns and villages, local municipalities, and to counties. However, in New England, counties don't really have the same function as they do in the rest of the country. And so they have reapportioned the county allocations to distribute it among all the municipalities. So that's just a point of reference for you. There's no logistical difference in terms of the money that's coming your way. That's just your portion of the county money.
Or is it mostly based on per capita?
Correct, yeah. Correct.
And they increased that total amount to us, didn't they?
After the county allocation, that's correct.
Oh, did you see what the total was?
Yeah, we're gonna pay the Kelsey Mountain Road.
Yeah, you probably can afford to do it with that.
So, for the most part, most expenses that you would be eligible under ARPA have to have occurred after March 3rd of 2021. That's March 3rd of this year. However, there are a few limited exceptions. And again, that's one of the weedy bits that we would have to really dig into the details of specific projects if you want to explore that. All of your funds have to be obligated by the end of December 2024, and obligated means that you've either placed an order or you've established a contract or an agreement that involves payment, right? So you've set the ball in motion to get that money out the door. And then all the funds have to be actually spent by the end of December 2026, and any unexpended funds have to go back to Treasury. So these have an expiration date, but still we have some time, right, to sort of think through deliberately how you best want to use this money. So in terms of what you can spend the money on, and again, these are very broad categories, the devil's in the details, but we can get through that. And I'm always available for a phone call or come back to future meetings, whatever is helpful to you all. The first sort of broad umbrella category is responding to COVID-19. And so that can mean either direct assistance to business or households, or it could be sort of operational changes within town to protect people and prevent the spread of COVID. The second broad category is sort of hazard pay, premium pay to essential workers. That definition of who is an essential worker is different from what you might have encountered under the CRF, which is a different regulatory universe. So if that's a road that you want to explore, let's talk about that. I can sort of walk you through what the definitions of that actually are. The next sort of category is interesting. It's called lost revenue. And basically what the federal government is saying is, okay, we're creating this pretend scenario in which there was no pandemic. Oh, we wish, like everybody wishes that were so. We're pretending that there was no pandemic. And in that pretend scenario, this is what we expect your revenue to have done, your general revenue, so across all sources for your town, how we expect it to have changed over time. And so they're projecting that if there had been no pandemic, you would have a 4.1% revenue growth rate, annual revenue growth rate. And that's true for cities as well as small towns. They just sort of set a broad baseline there. And so many towns in Vermont are sort of looking at this category. There's been some confusion. They said, oh, well, we didn't lose property taxes. We didn't really lose revenue. So we don't actually qualify, but that's not necessarily true. If you did not experience a 4.1% growth rate during the pandemic, then you actually do have lost revenue, at least as the government calculates it. And so VLCT has put together a calculator, and it's sort of a complicated spreadsheet that you would take reports from NEMRIC, and you would upload the data into the spreadsheet, and you figure out exactly what portion of that $400,000 that you're getting.
So you could put
could
that
be
right
used
into
as lost
town
revenue.
money.
So whatever portion you calculate is lost revenue according to the definition. can be spent on anything that you would spend your general fund on. So it's very much more flexible. There are a few restrictions, we'll talk about that in a minute, but it's so much more flexible than the other categories. So it's worth running the calculator. It's worth doing that calculation. If you take a look at the calculator and you're like, wow, this is intimidating, you can ask NEMRIC to run it for you. They'll probably charge a small fee, but you can use your ARPA money to pay them to do that. And it's worth, you know, knowing how much you have to work with. So there's that category. And then there's the water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure category, which I'm sure all of you have heard about. And again, there are sort of restrictions within that category, but the idea is expanding broadband access, improving our drinking water and wastewater systems. So those are the sort of do's, right? And then the prohibitions that are clearly laid out in ARPA in a general sense are, if you're going to be using these dollars as match, make sure that the funding program that you're working to match these dollars to doesn't prohibit the use of federal dollars as match, because even though these monies have come to you as a town, they're still considered federal dollars. They never lose that identity as federal dollars. And many times we can't use federal dollars to match to a federal grant. So just be aware of that, check and make sure that you're not crossing any boundaries there. ARPA says that you cannot use its money to make payments for pensions. And what it means by that is you can't make an extraordinary payment intended to reduce your liability in a pension fund. If you wanted to pay essential workers hazard pay, you could pay that money even though it includes pension payments because it's part of your regular salary payments. So that's how that sort of shakes out. And then infrastructure not directly addressed in ARPA is a no-no. And again, we have to talk to the details of that. But for example, paving a road would not be considered, unfortunately, eligible unless you use the lost revenue rate to do that, because that would be general funds. So again, sort of the infrastructure that's coming under ARPA, there's the broadband stuff, but then on the water side, there's drinking water, wastewater, but as part of the sort of ARPA universe of what you can do with that water money, you can also work on anything that would be in your MRGP plan. So your municipal roads general permit. So that means ditching, right? Sort of stormwater control. As long as it has a water quality benefit, you can make that connection. So that's a positive. And then the last sort of category is rainy day funds, financial reserves, outstanding debts. You know, if you had debt that was incurred, it's not related to ARPA at all, then definitely you can't be paying that off. You can't sort of be replenishing if your town incurred expenses and, you know, it depleted your rainy day fund, you can't go back and refill those. That's how that works. Funds, and I know that Brenda and I will probably have more detailed conversations about this around specific project ideas, but once you're ready, once you've identified and you feel confident that you've got an eligible project, you've talked to the people you need to talk to, there are a number of steps that you have to take in order to move forward with that. And I will say first, right off the bat, that we're still waiting for finalized guidance and a rule from Treasury, right? So unfortunately, the regulations that we're working off of right now, they're all kind of provisional. The guidance is somewhat vague. And so there's a lot of frustration right now about sort of in a wait and see mode, and everybody's a little nervous about doing anything because we're not sure what changes might come from the federal government. We're hoping that they had originally said end of 2021, but here we are. So who knows, right, when that's going to come. But one thing to think about now is that it's important to make sure that you've got a procurement policy, a purchasing and procurement policy in place on the books, adopted as a select board. And that policy needs to be consistent with uniform guidance. So basically the federal regulations around how you do procurement. And basically federal guidance says, okay, well, it's this level of purchase, then these are the procedures that you would follow to make sure that it's a fair purchase and you're actually doing it above board. Larger purchases obviously have to go through competition to make sure that you're comparing quotes correctly, right? So that's something that I think is important to make sure that you've got set and that it's consistent with federal guidance. in the ARPA sort of guidance that we currently have, they also lay out a number of rules and regulations about how you should be operating and making decisions about these funds and tracking the use of the funds. Make sure that you're compliant with all of that. Just read through it. That starts on page 6 of the guidance. Go through that. And one of the sort of, I guess, rough rules of thumb that you can use to help you figure out whether you're actually compliant with those regulations is you can take a look at the state auditor's internal controls checklist, which most towns are familiar with, and just make sure that you've hit all of those check marks there. And so that has to do with dealing with conflicts of interest and making sure that your procedures are above board for making financial decisions, right, and recording those.
Because you paved road again.
So once you've got all of that sort of infrastructure in place, the way that you go about moving forward with spending ARPA money is you would have an official select board motion. You would record thoroughly in the minutes. You would document what the decision was ultimately on that expense and justify why you think that expense is eligible. That's going to be important to have in your records. You wouldn't be submitting it necessarily with your annual reports, but in case the auditors come knocking, and that is the big fear, right, around this money, because there is so much ambiguity, and there are very specific measures in ARPA about, okay, if you use this incorrectly, we're going to claw the money back, right? So the LTT is telling all the towns, be careful, do your due diligence. In that select board motion, make sure you're explaining why you think this is eligible, what the relevant expense category is for that particular project.
Sarah?
Yeah.
Is the payout going to work the same way, say FEMA does, or federal and state grants, in that, say we want to do culvert work or ditching work? Do we, just because it's the real world, we have to pay a contractor, for example, to do that work? Would ARPA then reimburse us for that, or do we have to wait to get a check from them and then do it?
So this is not a reimbursement program, miraculously, because so many federal programs are.
Right.
You have half of your money in your account right now, or at least you should, and you're getting the other half come fall, late summer, early fall of 2022. And so you have that money to work with. And so there's no sort of pre-approval for a project, but that does put the onus on the town to make sure that you have got all of your ducks in a row. So if you get audited, which is very possible, you have everything to prove that you used it correctly. And so
it's a special fund and we need to track it as such.
correct, exactly. Keep it as a separate fund, definitely.
So Sarah, you were telling me it should be in the minutes in a select board meeting and that you guys had voted on it and that's in the minutes.
And you're following whatever your procurement or purchasing policy says in terms of documentation for that particular expense, whether you have to get quotes or you have to do research to get that particular expense justified. And then any other documentation that might be required through all of this federal guidance. When you look through that federal guidance handbook, there's sort of it breaks it down by expense category. And they're like, okay, well, if you're giving assistance to households, this is the information that you're going to need to provide in your report. So it's worth taking a look at that ahead of time and be like, all right, is there anything we need to be aware of before we make a purchase or before we send money somewhere, just so that we're aware of the information that we have to have in our hands before we send a report to Treasury through the portal. So that's sort of an overview of the logistics. I've got my contact information on the back of the handout there. I'm always available to talk by phone. I'm always happy to come back to another meeting and talk through ideas or lead a public conversation if that's helpful. We've done that for a couple other towns now. Heartland, we're doing a couple community dialogues in January, so that's exciting. So however you can be useful, and I did do a little bit of research on the specific ideas that you had tossed up in the air on our phone call earlier, so I can talk about those, or we could do that offline, whatever makes sense for.
A little bit had to do with this building again. And it overlapped with some of the things you were talking about with Wi-Fi here, having one computer hooked up. And the other one was water backup for both the town offices here, a server, things like that for the town offices.
Romantic lighting.
Yep. So it's starting to get a little bit in the conflict of interest again.
Betsy.
Sarah, hi.
I'm Betsy Race, I'm one of the auditors. And so this is, you're available to us with any questions that we have, and the town treasurer. And I heard you talk about never can uploading stuff, and it's all.
Yeah.
Just words out in the air to me right now, I don't have that.
So
We will probably be in contact with you.
please do, absolutely.
Do you have any training on this that are, you got coming up or anything like that, or?
Like a training event.
Yeah, yeah.
So we really don't have a training per se. There
That's okay.
has been a training on how to use the calculator. And that video was recorded and it is posted on the LCP website, so I highly recommend that. But again, it is something of a leading tool.
We're just
So-
gonna be in touch with you.
Yeah, yeah. So, honestly, for the calculator question, the best host to contact our network, because they created the tool.
That's the calculator. Okay.
The calculator will talk to it. So
It would be nice to know how other towns are approaching this and
yeah,
what the steps are, that kind of thing.
So one of the things we're hoping to do in the new year, either January or February, maybe timeframe, is to have a regional forum for all of our towns to sort of get in a digital space together and just share project ideas and share where they're at with the process. And share tips and ideas and things like that.
That's great, that's great.
Sarah, how does this work with budgeting? Like, we're just starting to budget, so
Right.
if there's a special fund with all this money in it, you're recommending it still has to pass, a town meeting, say, as part of our town budget, or is it almost like its own little special fund? So if there was something that the select board said.
It would be up to us, wouldn't it?
Ultimately, the select board has the say over how the money gets used. From a best practices standpoint, getting public input is really important, right? And it makes the most sense for your towns to do those conversations through town meeting day, then I would encourage you to do that. I think it depends on what has worked well for your town in the past and what your residents expect. But ultimately, the select board has the decision over how those funds get spent.
So if we wanted to spend $100,000 on a ditch, we could make that decision. It wouldn't have to come up on the town report and be voted on at town meeting because we already have the money,
Correct.
right?
Correct. It would be advisable to have some sort of public input before you made that kind of decision. But yes, you wouldn't have to have a town vote on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not to be raised by that.
Right,
Correct.
right.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Cool.
And in response to your questions about those various projects, so, doing internet connection for the town hall, I think makes sense from a sort of COVID mitigation perspective, as we had talked about, because you have a bigger space so folks can spread out more. If this is going to be your emergency operations center or your shelter, that also makes sense. Doing lighting is probably not a good fit under ARPA because you have to demonstrate that you're using the funds to mitigate the spread of COVID, right? And so, doing internet in a space that needs internet in order for people to work so they can spread out, that makes sense. But in a place that already
Our COVID or our ARPA grant money, and like, that's a correct use of.
that makes sense.
Okay.
Yes.
But right now, she's got one hard wire in
Yeah.
there.
Right.
She's the only one in here using the
Right,
internet.
right, yeah. So having a plan, having a consultant come in to help you figure out a better way to do Wi-Fi in this space certainly makes sense, I think, from an ARPA perspective, as long as you articulate in your motion in which you decide to spend those funds in that way, that this is why you're doing it expressly for the prevention of the spread of COVID, because this is a larger space. Just make sure you've dotted all your i's and crossed all your t's so that there's no question down the line.
So Sarah, would also a new server, because I was told today, if Rudy's still on the line, that our server is pretty old at the town offices, right there. And we're one of the only towns, I guess, off the tech support we use that's not crypto secure at all. Would that fit into it too, or the ARPA funds, or would it?
You would again have to be able to show that it's somehow tied to the mitigation of COVID, right? So it depends on how.
Doing virtual
I mean,
things.
Yeah, but being-
Contact, we're doing way more.
Yeah, we're doing a lot more virtual, trying to be safer.
The website now, we're utilizing a lot more for, everything so that people can access it because, people can't come and look at posters and things like that, so.
And so is the server in danger of? like-
It's been a concern for quite a while, but it's like over $10,000.
Right.
And you can hear the argument about, every little thing here is a big deal for us.
Yeah, right.
That's a big
It's a sort
expense.
of interesting line between COVID protection remediation care and sort of general emergency preparedness. And I don't know the answer to that yet, but it's interesting to me.
Yeah. Does the grant cover also like mitigating and making things better right now so that, say this happened again 5 years down the road, we were better equipped and not necessarily like just currently covering the cost of COVID mitigation? So like Brenda's saying, like having this be an emergency shelter and all the things that would go into it. Or, like I want to use it for making the records digitized. Obviously right now people are coming into the vault still, but
Right.
say something awful happened and the whole building burned down and God forbid, but we should have that, that type of thing digitized.
Plus you can work from home.
Right.
If we ever, she was working from home before.
Right.
If we have it all digitized.
Or less people come in, so less chance for.
Right, right.
So
Digitizing
These are all
records is
things we've
absolutely
learned through
eligible.
COVID that we sort of made do.
Right, right. Digitizing records is absolutely eligible. We've got changing the space here, again, it's going to depend on exactly what you're hoping to do, because you've got to make a clear connection to say this is going to prevent the spread of COVID.
I think we can safely do that. If you saw this group here over at our town office,
Right.
you would clearly see why we moved over here tonight.
Right.
With very limited connection that's in this corner only.
Right, and that makes sense to me. The server question is a little trickier. I might kick that up to the OCT and I'll get back to you on that one.
Okay, thank you.
I'm trying to look through the list of other things we can talk about. I know you had mentioned the emergency response radio system needs upgrades. That I think is going to be challenging to fund under ARPA because it's hard to fit that under capital investments in public facilities to meet pandemic operational needs. Specific to pandemic, right?
Okay.
So
that may fall under Homeland Security grants.
right, yes, exactly. There's always that possibility, or you could use lost revenue funds for that, right? Something to think about. You had also asked about backup generators for the town hall. And so I was told, I had a chat with the OCT about this. I was told that, if this is in fact the emergency operations center or an emergency shelter, then you could do a backup generator for this building under ARPA. And if not, if you for some reason change decisions around that, then it really isn't gonna fit under ARPA. So you have to be very certain that you're definitely gonna use this building in that way. And then you had also mentioned maybe some water projects, and I heard through DC that the town is already considering a sort of a consolidation project, a 3-system water consolidation project.
What's that?
Maybe they're wrong. This is from Lynette Club, and I'm not sure.
I don't quite know how they would do that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. At any rate, water stuff really needs to run through the state office. So you would give a call to the water SRF or to the drinking water SRF, the state revolving fund, to talk through the specific eligibilities of the program. Because the way that ARPA works is it says, okay, if a water project is eligible under the Clean Water State Revolving Fund or the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, then it's eligible under ARPA. both of those programs have their own libraries of eligibility book guidelines, right? So it's important to just double check with the state, like, are we reading this correctly? Is this actually eligible? Can we use our dollars? Last week. The other thing to remember too is that, there's other money that's coming down the pipe. And so if something's not a good fit for ARPA, it's very possible that it might be a good fit under the federal infrastructure bill that's coming down the road, right?
So is that gonna go through you too, or will you give us guidance on that?
We have no idea how that's gonna actually play out on the ground. Unfortunately, there was a very helpful sort of webinar that happened last week with departments of state agencies that they talked about, okay, this is what we know so far about the infrastructure bill. They really didn't explain how it was going to translate down onto the ground. It looks like in many cases it's going to be competitive grant programs. So it's possible that the town would have to apply for grant. Two Rivers might be able to assist with that. I don't know yet. We don't know where our budgets or our workloads are at right now. But it's something to keep an eye out for. And that's certainly going to be more helpful for road safety, bridge repair, that kind of infrastructure work. They're going to be doing some broadband work through that, I think, as well. Water work is going to be big there. Brownfield work as well. So, and energy work as well. So there'll be a lot of money for weatherization, energy efficiency, conservation, that sort of thing. So again, that's something to keep in mind. The state has also set up its own grant programs using their ARPA allocation because they got their own pot of ARPA money, right? So if you're considering, for example, a water project that is very pricey, because they're all very pricey, think about whether you can leverage state funds in addition to your ARPA money, right? So think about how you're going to piece together your capital stack for any particular project. And keep the state in mind because they do have all these various programs. Some of them predate ARPA. That can help you sort of piece together the funding to actually make a project happen because $400,000 goes quick, right? And projects are very expensive, but you might be able to use part of that money in addition to state loans or grants or whatever to actually make a project come into reality.
If that's federal ARPA money coming to the state, does that then run into that same problem of you can't use that federal money and our municipal ARPA money?
So my understanding is that's not an issue with the particular ARPA programs that have been stood up by the state because they're all like dollars, they're all federal dollars, but there's no match requirements there. They'll tell you, okay, well, this is all we can give you, and you're gonna have to come up with the rest. But I haven't heard any conflict, and the state's been promoting actually you using your ARPA dollars in combination with their programs to make something happen. Yeah, but again, something to double check and explore with the state program leaders, but that's what I've been hearing consistently over the past few months.
How does ARPA work with things like education or housing? Because I don't really see those
Right.
applicable here, or is it a different stream that's dealing with that?
Right, so ARPA has very limited spheres in which you can deal with education and housing. And that is really targeted towards what the rule calls disproportionately impacted populations. And unfortunately, this is one of the areas in the guidance where we just don't have good information about how that's going to be defined. The state has defined disproportionately impacted populations as low-income households. And we're really looking to the state right now because they've had all their lawyers do all the risk analysis and they're saying, well, we feel safe saying this is true based on current regulations. So that's sort of where I'm taking the lead from, is that low-income households are really how they define that group of people. And the rule says that you can do services to address homelessness, affordable housing development, housing vouchers, sort of services to navigate available housing resources for low-income residents. And so that's sort of where housing comes in, sort of addressing housing insecurity in the community. And then in terms of education, again, this is focusing on low-income households. It would be sort of support for actual school services or childcare, sort of like young, early education work. We can get into the details of that if you have a specific project. It's tough because you have to be able to prove that the beneficiaries of the program are meeting the eligibility requirements in the rule, which is disproportionately impacted, which is low-income households, right? So you have to think about a project that is very specifically narrowly targeted to meet the needs of those folks in your community.
But
It's also-
something like Orange County Parent Child Center,
Mhm.
should they be talking to you about something they could do, for example?
So we've had a lot of conversations as RPCs, because we have state coordination calls every single Tuesday. And we've had a lot of conversations about how towns can transfer funds to a local nonprofit that is doing work that they want to support, as long as that work is actually meets the eligibility requirements of the Arpa regulations. And for this kind of a direct assistance to low-income households, it probably makes the most sense to have a provider who has experience and has already set up a program, all of their eligibility criteria in place to sort of take that ball and run with it, rather than having you set up a very complicated system of screening people and then actually delivering benefits to people, which is, in order to meet the federal regulations around that, that's a huge lift for a town versus a provider that does that every day, right, as part of their job. If you were interested in transferring funds to another entity, it's very important, and we can talk about this more, and there's going to be more guidance coming from VLCT about this, but it's very important that you establish a formal memorandum of agreement with that entity that spells out exactly what the scope is, what services they're going to be providing, and how those align with ARPA's eligibility regulations. Again, for purposes of audit safety, to make sure that everybody's on the same board. And you would be responsible for reporting on the activities of that entity who had received your money in your annual reports. So again, maintaining that close relationship and communication about how it's going.
But things like PCCs are not getting a big chunk of money either, right? So
Sorry, which organization?
that like Orange
Parent Child Center.
Parent Child Centers around the state, they're not just having this infusion of cash to use, they would have a essentially fine response rate.
Exactly, yeah.
And so because they serve the county and yet it happens to be located in our town, it seems like it becomes then more complex potentially to do something with other towns in Orange County and send money their way.
Right, and so the way that ARPA deals with that is it says you have to be able to show, and this is where the memorandum of agreement comes in, you have to be able to show that the investment that you have made in that other organization is proportional to the benefit that your town residents receive. So again, that's just spelling out in your MOU, okay, this is how many people you're going to serve in our town, right? Through your work. Any other questions?
She can come back.
Right, Sarah? Absolutely.
We have the contact.
Yes, you do.
Thank you. That was really helpful.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
Happy holidays.
So I didn't print off new agendas, but I had updated them, and Jody and Betsy are gonna talk now. I know, I'm sorry, I slacked. I didn't even print you off a new one.
Betsy's here for moral support, Sharon for guidance. You know,
Give us good news.
I will try to give it to you. So I have yeah, that's mine. I just have some, it's just like my agenda kind of what points I'm gonna get across, and then exactly that will be helpful for definition that I'm looking at. So that you guys kind of know. There's kind of two different things that I'm bringing up, but this is the one that I'm gonna focus on. I'm gonna talk about, I just define them.
If you have an extra.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, Jody. You're welcome.
well, I don't know. It's called, so I'm Julie Blake, I'm the current health officer. And we're going to talk about 92 Gilly Road. And so I'm just gonna have some photos too. I'll just put them up here for now and then you guys can slowly look through them as I'm talking. Okay, so these photos were taken, when did I go up there, yesterday?
Was it yesterday?
You went, yeah, Monday.
Yesterday?
Yeah.
Yes, yesterday/today, I went back up, so there's a couple photos, but this is just what we're talking about, so everybody can pass around, everybody knows what we're kind of dealing with. So 92 Gilly Road, we have some RVs on the right side of the road as you're coming up the road. And I'm just gonna give a brief, before I talk about my points, I'm gonna give a brief history of it, so people who are there possibly might be one of the owners on Zoom. I don't know. Is Chase Seaman?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi, Chase.
Okay.
So he's here with us, and he is the son of one of the owners, so he's one of the, yes. Okay, so 92 Gilly Road, we have two RVs on the right side of the road. The first one is kind of right on the road, they park right on the road. And those are the first pictures you're gonna see. And then the second driveway on your right is going to be where the property owner was living in a trailer, like the mobile home. And then there's another RV to the side there where two other people are living. So there are 4 tenants total, 2 per camper, and then Anthony Winters would be in the owner, part owner would be in the mobile home. Anthony is no longer living there as of today, but as the history I'm going to talk about, he was living there. Okay, so first report we got on the property that we have record of was last year. We had a report that property does not have septic. Betsy was health officer at the time. She went up and made her assessment. That's in the record. Betsy had talked to you guys about it, but it's in the public record if anybody wants to see the nitty gritty of it. But pretty much the basics is Betsy found that Anthony was living there without power, without septic, without water, was trying to gain access to electricity from neighbors' source and was found to be doing a lot of different violations. Betsy at that time made an online report to the Department of Conservation Enforcement, actually on April 30th, an official report. And at that time, it was taken into the state's hands and it pretty much was told that they were going to deal with it. So fast forward months at a time, pandemic hit, we're, not hit, but pandemic's continuing, state decided to not notify us, not discuss with their plans and keep us updated. We got another report on 10/19. I started my position on 10/1. I got a report that trash was in the road and that people were not able to get through, that trash was being left up where their car was parked. And then, so I drove through the property. And it was, the trash was not in the road when I went up through. It was on their RV and on the ground and very, it was, you could see it from the road, but actually trash wasn't in the road at that point. And I got followed by one of the tenants in their vehicle very closely and very intimidatingly. They had seen me and my black SUV was intimidating. I guess it does look like a undercover cop car, I guess is what was told. I don't think it does, but I was seen as a threat. And so the tenants then had a possible gun, we're not sure. And it was intimidating for me. And so I just left Gilly. I didn't want to start anything. I was just there to see, to make sure there wasn't an immediate health public risk, and I left. At that time,
Was there a conversation between you?
I did not, no, I didn't. It was, I had been up through slowly. I was gonna take some pictures of, and I was just checking out the land because I got report about handoff from Betsy when I started of kind of what was going on there. But she was waiting for, there wasn't any more reports there at that time from the community at that point. And, we were waiting on the state as well. And so that's kind of how it was relayed to me. And so I was like, I didn't want to go up there starting trouble if I didn't have to, not to be. So I then went, I left And I reported, I made an incident report. I have record. I'm new to the process of submitting it to you guys. So I have it, I typed it. It was just, you know, I felt uncomfortable, but I didn't see any immediate public health risk at that time. And I moved on. I then got, anonymous report from some neighbors of, their concern that this report was made earlier in the year and that nothing's being done, and that unfortunately the tenants in that first RV, on top of all the things they're doing wrong, are not being nice. Their dogs are being aggressive towards them. There's a horse farm up there, they can't get through, so people are not being able to walk anymore. It's they're being disruptive to the neighbors. They're having domestic violence and altercations in the front yard and disrupting the community. And so I then took it upon myself to call the state and find out what's going on. And I had to call 3 times. No one would call me back. I got multiple people there, but the squeaky wheel gets the oil. So I finally got a call directly from the enforcement officer, Dan Reeson, a week and a half later. But at that time, he and the state felt that they did not enforce at the time because they're RVs, and it is hard to prove how long they lived there. So there's lots of camps in this area of Vermont, unfortunately hunting camps and RVs and camping, and he felt, and the state felt at the time, and continued to, they kind of just forgot about it, actually, not forgot about it, but they weren't on it, that if he enforced these people, that it would come down to proving that they lived there more than 90 to 100 days a year, and having to sleep there. So the definition is you have to sleep there overnight and wake up there in the morning for over 100 days of the year. And he, unfortunately, the state did not feel that they could show enough evidence that they were doing that. I proposed options. I proposed that what if the neighbors filmed them? What if we had affidavits from the neighbors? And they said that that was not enough evidence on their end, but the town can do what they, you know, the town can do other steps. And so that was his recommendation at that time.
Does the mobile home have septic and electric?
No, there's no electric, no water, and no septic at any.
So what did the state say about that?
He's no longer living there. So I guess he had got in touch with Anthony Winters. He had got in touch with the other owners, Anna, and well, Charles is actually the owner. Anna is his wife. And at that time, Anthony was in and out of the facility or the trailer, not really living there. And it was proposed to him, because there's grant money for property owners to do a new septic, that he was considering it, I guess was what the state said. But Anna wanted to wash her hands of the property. So at that time also, they were found that the taxes have not been paid or delinquent on the property. And that confirmed with Anna and Charles that they don't want the property, and Anthony just couldn't afford it. So he's the other property owner, he just couldn't afford it. So at that time, I contacted Gary, and I let Gary know of what I'm doing. And I also contacted Joe Paquin to find out exactly what's going on with the tax delinquency. I contacted Jeff Lewis, and I also reached out to legal counsel for Octavian, and he kind of just gave me a brief. So I don't think we're gonna get a bill. It was just a brief of what papers do I need to, what steps do I need to follow to make sure we're protected as a town. And I did follow I've been following his steps, and so I'm taking photographs, and I brought this up to the select board. So Jeff Lewis found that this property is up for tax sale in about 2 months. He said that they're in process of confirming there is a mortgage on the property. So he is not sure if the tax sale will go to full tax sale or not. And so that's why I put tax sale as our first topic, because that's one of the options that we could potentially wait for as an option. That's not my recommendation, that'll be at the end, but that is an option that we could wait for tax sale. But as in the things that I found, that the tax sale probably won't happen, because the bank's going to, once Jeff notifies them of what's going on, they're probably going to pay it off and then put it up for a foreclosure sale. So the next is what, outright property sale. And Chase, oh yes, and Chase also, that was with outright property sale. So Chase and Anna and Charles also feel that they would like to sell the property, but the tenants that are living there is making it very difficult to do. I guess according to Anthony, he did try to sell this a few months ago, but the sellers were chased off the property by the tenants, the people living in the RVs. We call them tenants because they are living on someone else's property. And I guess paying rent to Anthony a certain amount of money, but I'll get to that in a little bit. So we could just wait for, if I can, and you'll hear my next proposals, if we can get the tenants off, then Anthony and Chase's family, which would be Charles, could sell it. And that could be immediate, and that would be an immediate step that we would do. We would post it on the Vermont Heritage real estate, and that was something that Chase and Charles and Anna and Anthony were all willing to do at this point. So our next topic, so my findings when I went up there were concerns, and my email conversations with some of the neighbors were also concerning. And so I felt that I needed to reach out to the property owners directly and find out if what was going on. So Chase and Anthony have been wonderful, actually. And Anna directed me to Chase. Chase, correct me if I'm wrong, are you power of attorney over the property now?
Yes, my father's granted me power of attorney.
Okay, so Chase is now power of attorney. So we have been in complete cahoots. I've been talking to him about this, and we have determined that the tenants, they're no longer, they're not living with sewer and water. So I need an emergency health order. And so that's what I felt was the next step. So I went up and did an inspection yesterday on which would be both units, which would be each RV. Unfortunately, usually this goes by the tenant calls me and I go in and it works together. Well, unfortunately with that first RV, they don't want me there. And so I grabbed Brenda and my husband and we went up safely, and I was able to go during the time when they weren't home and do my inspection from the outside as best I could. And so the inspection was found to have some delinquencies, of course. And so at this time, what this kind of assessment does is it tells you what to do. So once I find a delinquency, it then tells me the next steps. And the delinquencies that I found was, no running water, no electricity, no septic system, and trash. It's called food scraps, trash, debris on the outside of the facility too close to the road is it doesn't pass inspection. So at this time, the first recommendation for unit 1, which I'm calling the first RV on the right, unit 1, is an emergency health order, which would therefore, and I would have to get your approval, but it would say that I have to remove the tenants in 30 days. They would get notified by the state police or certified, and they can, and also Anthony would be notified, and Chase also, because they are the property owners. They can fix those things, but we know that is not, the property owners don't want that. They are done with the property, they want to sell it, and 2, they're not going to pay $35,000 to dig up in December to do a septic, and all the costs are too costly on a tax delinquent property. So
Jody, can you be a tenant, but essentially a non-resident, or
A non-what?
a non, as far as that sleeping 100 days in a place. So if they're saying,
Well,
we're
they're-
in an RV,
So Anthony could do it,
Right.
but these guys don't own the property.
right?
They don't, they can't, because the property owners no longer want them there. So they can't actually fall under that, if that makes sense. I mean, they couldn't say, like, we live in a camp now, you can't get us. Now it falls under, you're in a rental. The owners have asked for a rental inspection and you don't pass. And now it's a public health risk that because unfortunately, rental falls under, so if this was Anthony living or Chase living this way, I can't come in and say, I can't tell him how to live. But because it's a rental, we have a little bit more power because a rental,
Because of the cold.
yeah, the rental facility has to be held to a standard. And so that's where we're coming with it. And then the next unit 2, Jason and Tabitha are their names. I want to note they were wonderful. I talked to them. They have some issues with social economic, but they were wonderful. They worked wonderfully with me about letting me know about their circumstances and working with me. So I definitely want to do the same thing, and I told them I have to do the same thing as I would. The property is the property, but I want to just note that with them, I'll be nice to everyone, but I just want, I offered them a lot more help. I gave them 201's number. I would help them with guidance of where to go, and definitely gave them recommendations way more than I did unit number 1, who is more like, remove me if you can kind of mentality. So lastly, so that was an inspection. So they both failed. My recommendation is emergency health order. I did refer this violation also to fire safety, Morris Vandermark. I have emailed him and called him and let him know that they failed. So he can do his own assessment if he wants. Mine kind of trumps him because no septic and no running water trumps fire safety, but he can go up there with the no electric. I did see that their generators were, they were not in the best conditions of safety for fire safety. There were, not waterproof. There were no 2 exits in either of the campers, but the second camper did have an emergency window that I saw, and the owners confirmed it works. But other than that, so the next,
Do they have running water and electricity
No.
in the RV?
well, they have electricity enough for the generator, but they only can afford to turn it on so much. So they have heat. So if this was heat, if they had no heat, I would immediately have to have evicted them that day, because that's kind of how these orders work. So it kind of trump things, but immediately it's heat, and yeah, heat's the big one. And then it goes down the line of, water, septic, electric. Yeah, like it kind of goes down, but you get so many days for things. So like, for example, if I went up there and they had water and they had electricity and they had heat, but they didn't pass no screens in the window, no fire extinguisher, those things, we'd have 90 days or 100 days. We'd have a lot more time to, fix things. But unfortunately, this was found to be a severe public health risk for the tenants, for the community. So, I started a health order. I have an emergency health order on draft. I have to finalize it and bring it to you guys to sign. I'm here at the next meeting, but because it's an emergency health order, it actually kind of, it starts sooner. Like I don't have to wait for a meeting. She said, I kind of just, you guys can sign it after, but I can start, using it and authorizing it sooner.
Yeah, I think you just have to get it served.
Yeah, except it's, and I think there's a small fee with getting it served. I think it's like $30 or something. It's for the Orange County or whoever's sheriff to serve it to them. And it's tricky because there are 2 different families, so it may have to be served separately so that might be 2 charges because of that. So what also I wanted to mention, so the Department of Conservation, I talked to Dan Neeson last night. He is he's the enforcer. So at this time, we kind of I put him on hold. So because I wanted to talk to you guys, I talked to the owners. So they have written up, it's actually ready to go if we want to enforce it. It is a fine to the owners for not having septic. They're going to do the first line offense because they could do for the last whatever years, but for now they're going to do the first line offense of, I don't know the dollar amount, but it is a fine. It would go to both of the property owners. But I did, because the owners have been working with me, I know that obviously this has been dragging on, but at the same time, I'm new to this position, and everything that I've done, these guys have been wonderful to me. So I feel the town to decide if we are gonna, you know, go forth with serving them. It's called, and that's why I did a definition, but it's called an NOAV. It's a notice of alleged violation. And because of my photos, because of Dan's talked with the owners and mostly Anthony, we know for a fact there's violations. So they would serve that to them as much as like I would serve this public health order, probably certified mail. It's not as like time urgent, but it's giving you a warning, and I think it's $1. I think they get fined a few, like $100. And so that was something that we can continue to think about before we end this, of if we are going to proceed as a town to file this against them, or tell the state to file it, which I feel is kind of silly that they're putting it on us to make it. I felt like the state should have made this decision, but they said it, they feel that they don't want to, the state does, because they feel that it's not going to mediate any of the problem that's going on there. The problems are the tenants, not kicking a dog while they're down, as they said, because Charles, the actual owner, is on palliative care, and they feel, and they're trying to get rid of the property. The owners are, both of them, and so they feel like they're not, you know, the owners could just not pay it either, they're not really, you know, it's just, that's their recommendation.
Who owns the RVs?
The RVs belong to the tenants. So the trailer belongs to Anthony, but the 2 RVs belong to the people living there. So Tabitha and Jason are the ones that own the camper, the second unit, and then the first unit is Mike Taylor and Morgan Severance are the ones that own that one, I guess. This is hearsay from, I never got to talk to Morgan or Mike, but I didn't. By the words that they yelled at me when I drove away, I didn't want to. Okay, so that's one thing that to think about. The next is legal counsel. We could get Tavian to put his input on what we should do. And also, we were discussing, do we fine them for a driveway permit? And I put the car, that's where they park. They have it put in a driveway. They did not have a permit with us, like Tractor Mariah. They never submitted anything, so it is an illegal driveway. Do we also proceed with those charges as well from our town?
Not we, it's health.
Right,
You guys.
Yeah. That was just something that I found.
Hasn't been dealt with.
Yeah, it hasn't been dealt with.
That would go against the landowner, right?
Right. So yeah, that is kind of the overview. The biggest thing is, I know for coming from the community member, I know if these were my neighbors, I would want to know what's the quickest fix? What's next? What are we gonna do about it? And the quickest fix for my point is an emergency health order, because I feel not only are we doing this to appease our community, we're doing this because this is a public health risk of the way that these people are living and these tenants are, and the problem is I need your support. This isn't gonna be, they're just gonna say, okay, thank you, and they're gonna leave. This is gonna be, we're gonna serve them. They're gonna be very upset with us. They are up for, they can have a hearing. They can bring it to us, and
They have 5 days.
5 days to talk to us and, you know, bring up their points.
Ask for a special meeting with you guys.
They will definitely have, the owner is nervous that the tenants will have retaliation against whoever is in there. That just, unfortunately, I did talk to the Vermont State Police. And unfortunately, the people we're dealing with have had some rough things in their past. So we're dealing with some people that are afraid of the law. And so that's just something that it shouldn't impede anything. We need to proceed, but it's just something we need to just keep in mind that, you know, we're definitely going to have to be to the furthest extent. We're going to have to serve them. We're going to have to, I have to put up a form that says you have to leave this property. It's like a big thing. I think the police could hang it for me. I don't have to go up there again, but it has to be hung on the doors, like formally. And then also what's tricky, and I did because Jason and Tabitha worked so well. I mean, I did warn them that, you know, if this goes up for tax sale and someone buys it, that RV, it's a little tricky, Jeff said, because it could be until it's paid off, but their RV could go with the property. And so it's not just they need to get off, they need to get their things off as well, or they're going to lose their RV. And a lot of them they're all low income, and they don't have trucks or things to even, I mean, a lot of the RVs are pretty, you'll see, they're pretty, you know, where, and I don't know if they move very well, so it's gonna be a process. You can't just pull them out in 5 minutes. It's gonna be, I don't even know if they will try.
I don't know that their RV camper would have to be so off as long as they're not living there.
Well, I think it's fine until the tax sale. I think it's fine until the tax sale, and I think it's fine if, but if someone buys a property, it is risk, and I did tell them that it is a risk that, I mean, most property owners are going to take it. I mean, get it off.
The tenants or the landowner has a certain amount of window to fix it.
So they do have 30 days to fix it.
Is that the tenant or the landowner? Or
Both. I mean, the tenants necessarily, I mean, they can't fix it either. They can't afford to fix it. But yeah, the tenants, if they wanted to put in a septic, if it was permission, but unfortunately, there's 2 property owners here. Anthony may be willing to work with them, but Chase and his, they're done. They don't want them there. They want to be done with this. They want to sell the property. So it's not that easy as if the tenants really wanted to put in a septic, they'd have to get permission from the property owners, and you know, that's a whole other process. The tenants did bring up, can I buy there's a little confusion. They said that they've been paying the property owner, Anthony, for an acre or a quarter of an acre or something so that they can move it. But I did explain to them that without subdivision and a lawyer and a notary, that unfortunately that is kind of that's not legal. And I did give them advice. I did tell them to call legal aid, and because they said they had it in writing, but I told them that that's not even enough. And that Anthony even is calling it rent. So I think there's a little confusion between the tenants and the property owner. And so the tenants weren't even aware that it was up for tax sale. Or Tabitha and Jason, anyway, the other 2 were, but, and so they were feeling a little stressed. And so I gave them the resources, but it definitely didn't seem like they had anywhere else to go. So they're kind of there. I did, yeah, I just wanted to, yeah, I did do the assessment on their camper via what they told me, because I didn't go in, neither of the tenants were home. And Jeff and Tabitha's, you know, to a camp standard, they're okay. I mean, and granted, they don't have running water and they don't have sewer, but they, you know, their camper's like a 2001, and so with the generator, the lights work. They do have a separate bathroom. I mean, on a tenant say they could, if they had running water and electricity, and you know, the owners wanted them there, this would be acceptable. So like, just in the future, if we had other people living in RVs, you know, it is okay to live in an RV. It is, as long as you're getting your septic pumped and you're only living there less than 100 days, and you know, it's a tricky situation. But
Who has the dogs?
So, oh yes, and so when I was there, thank you for reminding me, there are 2 dogs, at least 2, I could see, and I'm reporting that there's only 2, that are there being aggressive. And one of the reasons why Betsy is and me getting emails that are being stuck in the camper for long, prolonged periods of time. And so that's unit 1, that first picture. And what's happening is they are so, they're in there for such long periods of time that we're concerned about their safety. So I made a report to animal control. I contacted Vermont State Police also. So there's a report of that. I'm not sure where it goes next. I know that they wanted animal control at Tunbridge to take care of it, but I did explain that this is kind of a heavy hitter, and our Tunbridge animal control is, you know, a woman, an older woman who that's not kind of, we couldn't even take the dogs if we wanted to. I talked to Tammy, and they're too aggressive. She couldn't, even if they were abandoned and we went up and took them, we can't even tame them here in Tunbridge. So it would have to be like a Vermont State Police handle of way more, because they're very aggressive. I hear the neighbors, Tabitha and Jason, said that they're scared of those dogs. A lot of people who live on that road are scared of those dogs. They're not, they're pit bulls. I guess nothing against pit bulls. I love pit bulls. But these pit bulls are not nice, and so we don't know if they're not registered with the town. We don't know if they're vaccinated. So that so I did make that report to the Vermont State Police last night. I also noted there's diapers and children's toys and chairs out.
So I did make a report to Department of Children and Families. I don't know, I did hear that, some of the neighbors were saying that, and that report would go under the name of the people who live there. So it doesn't necessarily mean the property, but it just means that I would like Department of Children and Family to just check on that family because it was concerning with the way they were living and the no electricity, the no water, the no septic. And I guess the children are only there on the weekends or every other, but that's still, we calculated 26 weeks of the year. That's still times 3 nights. I mean, it gets up to, you know, over 100 days that a child would be in that situation. And I felt really uncomfortable. So, and I'm a nurse and I'm a mandated reporter. And so I felt that it needed to be reported. I don't know what they're going to do with it, but I did report that I felt uneasy about the situation. And that, so yeah, so that's the steps that I've been taking. My recommendation is an emergency health order. The next recommend, you know, that's really my only recommendation at this point on that. The next thing is you guys, we need to make a decision. Am I telling Dan to submit that NOAV and to the property owners and fine them for not having a septic? And are we going to proceed with a driveway penalty? So those are kind of the 3 things. And then that we have to decide on. And then with the tax sale, unfortunately, like, we kind of just have to sit and wait. I'm hopeful that if I do this and I get them off, then Chase and Anthony can try to sell the property before this goes off.
Why can't they try and sell it anyways?
Right, but they can't sell with me. They can try. I mean, I told Chase he can, once we talked about it, and once I figured out what my plan was, he can post it on the site, but I'm just nervous. I don't want to deter people from going up there if they're going to chase them off again. So that's why I was trying to wait till they were off or close to being off before we started advertising to come up and see the property. But it's totally Chase and Anthony's decision. They can post it whenever they want to sell it, but and yeah, so.
So Jody, I'm still unclear on this 100-day rule.
Yeah.
So if I have an RV and I drive it on the Gary's farm.
Yep.
And I'm paying him rent for something, for the access, I guess, to stay there. After 100 days, it becomes a home or an apartment. What is it?
It's defining between a home, home and a camp. So you're defining it between, so you can, they let you get away with not having a septic and not having, it's mostly septic we're talking about with Dan, and it's just septic really we're talking about here, and conservation of Vermont land. But yeah, it's a septic. So you can live on Gary's land for like under 100 days of the year without a septic and nobody's gonna bother you. So that's why like hunting camps are fine, like having outhouses, not even having a bathroom, because you're there under 100. He also defined that if you just, so I have a camper on Gary, how about I put a camper up there and I only go up during the day and I read a book up there and then I leave every day, but I don't, that's still as long as I'm under 100 days of that as well, that still counts, even though I'm not sleeping there, because people are trying that too. It's a hard,
and it's not continuous.
Right.
Days.
Yes, so it's a year, for the whole year.
And then so if Gary says John's been in that camper over 100 days, and I say, no, I haven't, I've only been there 30 days, you know, then you get this.
You get this situation, and this is what Dan was talking about, that it's really difficult because we have 2 property owners here who, like, just like all of us, don't have a lot of money, and so like the state has been not pursuing as much, it seems. I don't know if it's right or wrong, but they haven't pursuing as much because they're with the pandemic and everything. They have other fish to fry is what, so I think it's unfortunate of why the state's doing this. I'm not sure why. It was just what they told me, and I don't know. I think he did say that it is really hard to prove, and you know, when they like their T's crossed and their I's dotted, and so they want to go to court and know they're going to win. And so they said that, you know, unless the actual tenant is going to admit that they live there, he said, like, we're not private investigators, we're not going to hire a private investigator. Yes, we can take neighbors' words, but do they really know if they're sleeping there? Like, that's his big thing, if they're sleeping their head there all night long. And I guess according to him, if you're not sleeping there all night long, then you're not technically, that doesn't count as a day. But I think that that could be gray area. That's why I wanted to talk to Tavy, and I think there's like a gray area there.
But the landowners would sign an affidavit saying, as far as we know, they're way over 100 days.
Exactly, but at the time, when Betsy was doing this, Anthony wasn't willing to do that, because he was living there, and so this is what I think made it drag on so long, as Anthony wasn't willing to work with anybody, the state, Betsy, the town, anyone, and so that's what was really the problem, was that the actual property owner too, or half the property, was saying, I don't know what you're talking about, we don't live here, we come and go, and so I think that's why it got, like, the state got even more deterred, is because they didn't even have like even a case as much as, you know, they're just hearing hearsay from the neighbors, and then the actual property owners, the actual tenants, they're denying it, and so. And I offered, I said, what if the neighbors put up a gate camera, or like, you know, or put it on the road, and like, and he's like, well, that fits into, sometimes the judges throw it out, they said, because it's like invasion of privacy, and they can't prove that they're there all night, which is, he said it's tricky, and so his recommendation was that, that's why they waited, but now because it continues to drag on, they are willing to do an NOAV to the property owners to fine them for not having a septic, but his recommendation from the state was, what's the point now? We're trying to sell it, and why punish poor Charlie? Actually, wasn't that Charlie anymore, and Anthony won't pay it anyway, and you know he won't. So, you know, at this point, we're not gonna get anything out of it, and that was his. But he did say that it was up to us, and, you know, to dot our dot our i's, cross our t's, we could say, yeah, yeah, I know, I meant dot our i's, cross our t's, I'm tired here.
You are listening.
You know, we could say, hey, we did everything we did, you know, and.
At the end of the 30 days, you can do a removal eviction.
Yeah, so that's what's tricky, is that, when I was talking to Meg, the townhouse officer resource, like, she didn't really say, like, most people like listen, so I don't know, we'll see, because I'm nervous this isn't gonna be the case. She's saying, well, they're listen, they may wait till the 30th day, and I was like, but they'll leave, but I don't know, I'm gonna have to research it more, because I think what would happen was just like, if I'm on your property, I'm living on your property and you don't want me there, I think it would be the same steps, but I know now Anthony and Chase are on my side, so I'm hopeful that, you know, they could also proceed with, you know, no trespassing.
What would you like us to do?
So I would like you to approve my emergency health order, and make a recommendation of if you want to continue with the state's NOAV.
And that's finding the property owners.
Yeah.
Which I don't care about doing that.
Okay.
What's our next step?
Driveway permit, do you want to find the property owners as a driveway permit?
No,
And then do you approve my emergency health order?
yes,
The select board chair signs that, and then if they don't want.
isn't that what you think? I mean, I don't want to find the landowner if he's trying to work.
Right.
And that's what I was gonna write in my report, and that maybe that would not cover us, but explain why we're making this decision. And we can blame the state on waiting so long. That's their go-to, but once we got really active and once we knew exactly what was going on with it, you know, the property owners worked with us, so I was gonna write that in my report.
So the fining, is it the state then, that's a liability to the state or to the town?
The state.
Okay,
It would be the state versus 92 Billy.
right, okay, so it's not like we could waive it later.
No, it would be them.
But we're not pushing the state out of this by not doing that.
No, so they have a pending report. It's always gonna be in there, obviously, so if, for example, if the property owners did this again, it would always be on record, so then like next time they would probably be a lot more aggressive, I would assume, I would hope, if you know, Anthony or Charles did this again on another property in Chelsea or whatever.
Yeah, it's an option down the road. If this continues to be some sort of.
Yes, Matt.
Thank you. Also, in deciding not to fine them over the driveway issue, I'm not threatening anybody. I'm saying you're opening yourself up to liability. And if those bozos are blocking the road like they normally do, and a fire truck has got to get up to my neighbor's house or an ambulance has to get from my neighbor's house up the road past that point, or if Sharon needs to come from there to my house, I'll tell you what, I'm gonna be some upset with this town, knowing that they didn't find those people. Even if they're the landowners, because the landowners shouldn't be absolved of any liability in this issue. They allowed those bums to come onto that property and do what they've done all these 3 years that they've been there. If I can't get an ambulance to my property and it has to come from Sharon and I die, I hope to God my spouse sues the heck out of this town because they decided not to put the responsibility on that landowner. To get that road has been blocked for 2 years now that I've seen. And I've told them 100 times, I'm gonna come back through here with my plow truck, my car's still in the
But
line,
if
plow the
we-
ditch.
If we gave them a driveway permit, would it make any difference?
They have to put a, yeah. They have to put a driveway in. I had to put my driveway in.
Well, they haven't yet.
I had to put my driveway in, I had to get a permission from this town to do it, and I had to get it okay.
So why does someone have to have a permit in the town of Tunbridge then? Why is it even on the,
Well, I think his point is that they could get the permit and still park in the road. Or they could get the permit and not put the driveway and still park in the road.
I don't think that they would, no matter, not just in this situation. Honestly, with funding and they probably would have parked in the road anyway. I totally get your point of, we should, I think what the biggest issue is that, we're trying to set an example as well, so, but.
Well, I got no problem with finding them for not getting a driveway permit. Cause we probably won't get paid anyway. But I'm more trying to get them out of it.
Yeah.
What would be the amount of the fine, you know?
I don't know, driving permit, that would be you
I think
guys.
it's like $65.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So everybody else in that neighborhood pays their taxes.
Right.
Yeah.
And we
I
pay it at a
understand.
very, very high tune, a very high tune, and it seems like for the last 3 years, the people who haven't been paying their taxes are getting a silver spoon, and the people who are paying their taxes are getting a stick.
I understand.
And our taxes haven't gone down, nobody said, hey, your property's worth a lot less now because this is going on up the road.
And that's what we're trying to do.
Where it's going on is
here.
where the major
Trying to-
amount of people who pay taxes live, and they're terrorized. We've got one girl who cries every single day over the threats that these people impose on them. That shouldn't be happening.
No,
so this is where we're at, this is what we're trying to work out.
I'm glad you're trying to do something, Tony.
Well, Jody's done a
Well,
lot
thank you
of
very much,
research,
Jody.
and again, it's a
We run
timing
into the
thing.
tricky thing that unfortunately, when you, and I mean, maybe, it's hard because Chase is obviously down in Massachusetts, and these are what happened to his, his elderly parents got kind of swooned by another, and I think what the issue is that's hard is that the tenants unfortunately walk away with little to no, they're the culprits, they're the one causing it. It is a very challenging situation, and a lot of towns struggle with, unfortunately, we can't as a town sue the tenants necessarily. Yeah, you're right, we need to hold property owners, but it's a really difficult situation because as we got to know the property owners, we felt that the property owners were not necessarily victims, but sometimes victimized by the other property owner, and it's a challenging. I mean, we can find we can find Anthony, but we're not going to see anything. I mean, I guess we can do that, but he's not going to pay it. He already said he's not paying it.
How much is the property assessed at?
42 acres is 92 buildings that we have. Sorry.
How much is it assessed at?
Oh, I don't remember.
And they've also clear cut that property, and I bet you they didn't pay a dime of taxes to this town for that income tax on that clearing of that property. I can't go back and research stuff because I get sick of it. I just get so fed up with it. But the state should have gotten tax money from that clear cutting, and the town should have gotten money from that clear cutting on that mountainside. It's part of the tax law.
Did you ever get me the tax card? I remember I requested it back, but I don't remember getting it.
Did I not do it too?
Yeah, I emailed you. I asked for Jeff and Tavian wanted me to request the listener card.
Let's see.
Yeah.
So
It was on the 7th, I think. I'll probably get it.
sometimes banks, that have mortgages on properties don't, depending on what's going on, they decide it's not worth it. Sometimes they will pay the back taxes and add it on to the mortgage and hope they're gonna get something out of it, like when the property sells. So hopefully either it goes up for tax sale or it gets sold. And both, you know, when Jason and Anthony put it up for
So it's
sale.
maybe behind
So
the
either
mortgage
tax sale,
payment?
one or
They
the
are.
other. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Mortgage is in delinquent, it's in foreclosure.
It will be.
Yeah, I think at this point, the bank is.
So they might, rather than go through all their foreclosure costs, they may let it just go to tax sale.
And that's where Jeff Lewis is
We don't know
unclear,
that.
we're unclear, so Jeff
He's
called
in
the,
contact with Jeff.
Jeff contacted the bank, and the bank, you know, like I dealt with banks a lot, with different things, and you never know who you talk to, some people will tell you one thing and some the other, and according to Jeff, this is why I'm putting this out there in quotations. He said that the bank doesn't know if they're going to go with the foreclosure process. They're thinking about just leaving it up for tax sale. So that's why we're also bringing.
The trouble with that is it may take 10 years for the bank to decide how they're gonna deal with it.
So that's why I think immediate response is someone needs to buy the property. I mean, that's really why I'm recommending to be really advocate about Vermont, you know, heritage real estate and to promote around town, like someone needs to buy it. I think that's the most immediate, because if someone buys a property, this is like done, and maybe even faster than my health order, because we can get non-trespassing and we can get them off. I do think that Anthony and Chase are willing to do that non-trespassing with me anyway, so I can start that process, and it may be sooner than this, but you know, it's just it's a tricky.
So you can sell a property with a tenant on it?
Sure. I think
Yes,
actually,
actually,
sell apartments with tenants
And
in
then
all the
that
time.
tenant has to leave very quickly?
Well,
Depending
in
on
this
you.
case, probably yes.
This case, because I'm gonna put a health order on it, yes, but, you know, I think, honestly, this was a different case a few days ago, because I hadn't talked to Chase. Anthony wasn't willing to work with me, and so I think that's where sometimes Betsy and I are kind of, we're trying to like, wow, like, okay, this is kind of a different case, because I was ready to, the property owner didn't even want me there, and the property owner doesn't want to work with me, and the property owner, you know, I only have one side, I only had Charles and Chase ready to work with me, but Anthony didn't want anything to do with me, and now Anthony is getting nervous, because, I mean, I'm told him that we're gonna fine him, I've told him all the things that can happen to him, and he's getting nervous, and so he's ready to work with me now, he wants to get the tenants off, he wants to just wash his hands of the property, so.
Well, and Charles, even this summer, Charles has been not in good health for a long time. I've only dealt with Anna. Anna got hit by a car, broke 12 bones. I don't know how she's alive, but she's doing well now. And fortunately, they've got Chase, and this is all some pieces that have come in that are being more supportive and very helpful.
Yeah, and I'd like to talk to Tavian if it's okay with you guys, so there might be a little legal fee, because I would like to make sure that I do this, like, once the health order and they're not gonna comply, I want legal advice of what we're doing next, and so he wanted me to get a lay of the land, so that the police had already know, but he wants it ready so that when I meet with the sheriff and we know exactly what we're gonna do and how we're gonna do it, so he had already advised me on that, and said to reach back out to him, just talk to Selectboard. He's like, I don't want to send him a bill if they're at, and I said, no, I'll talk, you know, I already told them that I was gonna reach out and see if this was worth even talking to you, and then I was gonna touch base with you guys again and make sure that it's okay to meet with him.
So do we have to make a motion?
Sure.
So it would be 2 health orders, one for unit 1 and unit 2, but the property would be 92 Gilly, so you'd have to word it like that.
I make a motion that we authorize Jody to carry out these emergency health orders, and she can talk to whatever lawyers or sheriffs or whatever she has to get this carried out as soon as possible.
Right,
All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
How's that for a motion?
I love that.
I'm interested.
I think we should also.
Are there any more questions?
My name is Heather Jenkins. I live at 127 Gilly Road. And if we were not during COVID right now, I would have you. Thank you so
You're
much
welcome.
for Jody, for everything that you've done.
No problem.
This has been a hellish 3 years. And as you can hear from Matt, it has been a torment in so many ways. And we have been terribly frustrated in the neighborhood, terrified.
I think the hardest part is that change, and I wanted to distinguish that. Anthony wasn't willing to work with us before, and that put us in a hard situation. So I know that me coming in looking like I think what really changed too is that the property owner now is like, I don't want to be there. And so that's what one of the biggest changes that helped this case, and why, you know, I was able to do this, because if he didn't give me permission to do these inspections and things, or tell me to, I can't just do them because the tenants didn't want me to do them and the property owner didn't want me. So like, that's what had changed a little bit. So I just, you know, I love Betsy, so I don't want it to be like, it's all, you know, it was, you know, this is what changed in the case to make it so that this is why it happened. Unfortunately, we had to wait this long, and Anthony had to really see who these people are. I mean, Dan Mason said, if I could find jerks, that's not the word he used, but if I could find jerks as neighbors, you know, we would be in business, because, you know, we'd be finding a lot of people, because unfortunately, you can't get fined for being a terrible person. I wish that you could, or a terrible neighbor. But, you know, I feel like, yeah, if we can, I mean, if we feel that there needs to be repercussions, but I think that we're doing them, we want them off. I mean, that's really what the community needs, and what everybody wants is we want them off, and I mean,
And we also will try to help them where we can with.
yeah, I would like to help Tabitha and Jason. I do. I feel for them. I know that,
But we might turn it on the others if we can help them somehow too.
yeah, if there
Because
wasn't
one of
a take.
their belligerents and scares, it's been our place.
I'll try. I'm not gonna put myself in a situation
Well,
where.
I just heard about some art money and some housing stuff. You know, first and last month's rent, pause or something.
Town far away.
They're all gone.
I think we should also need to assess the driveway.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll make
Yeah.
a motion that we find the property owners for the no driveway.
No driveway.
I wish there was some
I
way,
second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
there's.
Things to make it back for
Can you do
our.
that, Maria?
Sure thing.
Off the road, huh?
You have to be able to get a plow truck through there too, even some of these days.
Well, we
We've
sent them
sent
a
them
letter,
so many letters, and
But
yeah,
They've destroyed the culvert up the road, with a young lady who had to spend her own money, $1,000 for only put a gate up to keep them from pulling in and out of the driveway, turning around and coming up and everything.
I saw that.
What's the electric?
They don't have electric. Did you see that? Yeah, they were trying to take electricity from the neighbors. Is what it looks like. And so, yeah, that was something I brought up to Dan Mason. I don't know why the state's not.
They tried hopping on her pole without realizing
Yeah.
her, and she had to pay for that pole, Susan had to pay for that pole to get that far down to get power, because it was, you know, it stopped at wherever.
Right.
She paid to get that, they tried jumping on it, unfortunately, they didn't buy a long enough wire when they did it. It created a little bit of a problem that led into, well, hell,
They got it.
the money won't hurt for getting on her pole.
They got it under the road, though, right?
They got under the road, they
They
got right across
dug
the
the
road.
road up and
blocked
everything,
us
got it
from
under
there,
the road, and
blocked the-
the power company stopped that.
And also, I did report to the state. I don't know what they're gonna do with it. There was a septic tank or something that looked like a septic tank on the side of the road, some sort of tank. We don't know what it is. It was cementish. And yeah, cement or something, and now it is gone, by the way, and there are fresh dirt dug on unit 1. My husband, he was kind of going like this on the ground, but he couldn't, he was nervous, we didn't know what was in there. But I did take pictures, that's the pictures, and I'm gonna submit this report to the state, and, I mean, they can make, it's just hard because it's the tenants doing it, but still. Anthony did ask for this, or not ask, but he let those people on there, so.
Right.
Those are,
That water supplies a lot of people coming down the mountain with their drinking water for their houses. And that's been my argument from the very beginning with this, when I found out about this with that sewage gets into that water, it's killing that beaver dam already. I've seen very little activity in that beaver dam. So I know something's getting in their water.
Yeah, so unit two's camper is only 10 feet from the brook.
Yeah, where's it going every time they open their holding tank? It's going right in that brook. I can guess.
And then unit one
Oh,
has that culvert that runs, and then that culvert runs right to the brook too, and it runs right by the back of the camper, so. I mean, they're not directly by the brook, but that culvert from the road runs right down through their camper, and then it runs to the brook. And so that was also, that's the pictures I documented, so I'm gonna submit these to Dan Mason also, but his argument.
There's, nobody's ever pumped anything there.
So supposedly, unit two, Tabitha and Jason stated that they get,
John.
JB to come up, but that's why I wrote in quotations, because he had no documentation of it, written documentation. I called and John had no record of it, but he was a little confused. I called him last night, so this is all like he was gonna get back to me, but he was pretty sure he has nothing to do with it, so.
This is all like within the last week and a half.
Yeah, I did this all in a week.
Well, all of this, yeah, the whole,
Yeah.
him changing his mind, finding out about Chase being part of the
Yeah,
family and helping with this, and everything's like in the last.
yeah,
week and a
Anthony
half.
changing his mind within the last, week, he just changed his mind, and Chase talked to him, and then he was like, well, I think having a new face and a friendly, I mean, I'm friendly, I'm nice, I always approach everybody, I wanna help everyone, I'm not gonna, that's not how I like to approach things, and
That's
so.
his face isn't very.
Yeah, yeah, so Anthony was a lot more ready.
It's like yours, cousin.
He was ready to talk to me,
Yeah.
and he heard that I was an animal lover, I guess, so that was his reason to talk to me.
Well, please do whatever you have to.
And then the only thing I can request, can I use my health officer funds to reimburse me for these photos? I printed them, it was like $12, I have a receipt, I just wanted to know if I could use that for reimbursement. So I'm gonna put this in the report.
And any sheriff.
Yeah,
charges.
and any sheriff charges, yeah.
Yeah.
And lawyer, yeah, he did say that, in I think in his,
It's not the only case. This is the tip of the iceberg, what you guys have been running in this town, because since I started getting hepped up about this here with my neighbors, I've paid more attention. And I've seen over a dozen people living off grid in this town, which isn't always illegal, you just gotta have it done the right. And there are a lot of people that do it, and right on the way to the dump half the summer long. It's not like I wanna punish one person. But you gotta start someplace, because this water that we have in this country isn't, it can't be tainted, we have to drink it. And the reason we come up with septic tanks and leach fields was because this is one way we found it slows the process down of destroying the water system.
Also, I recommend to the community, I mean, this is what I'm putting on record, I recommend to the community to write to the Department of Conservation that, maybe more needs to be put into enforcement, because it also falls on the state, and the state hasn't been enforcing very at all. And talking to Dan, Dan's kind of like, you're really gonna make me write a report, and I'm like, well, if the town wants to too, yeah. Yeah, he did, it took forever, and then he was like trying to like say that like, well, the daytime thing.
That's good. Everybody gets some about this. But since then, it's turned out there's a lot more.
We carry this on a week now.
It's just that we're
A
not-
week from now?
No, somebody did stuff like that.
Oh.
You want to stay here for another
I won't
hour.
stay here until midnight. I've been up since 4, so. I'm fresh as a daisy.
Need some drugs, Mike?
No, you're welcome. You're definitely utilizing me, guys. You're testing me. That's what I was expecting. I took on this role, but you're testing my powers to do here.
We appreciate it.
And Brenda was reading down at the end of the road for she pretended to be that's what you guys would say. The code was, if she drove, she was gonna drive by at
Well, we need to
25
get
minutes.
together and make sure.
I told my inspection, she's about 25.
Because I had question marks.
She was gonna drive up, and if I waved, everything was good, but if I looked at her, she was turning around, ready doing this from our table. That's all, we were safe. We were fine. But, yeah, so, yeah, I'm gonna have, tomorrow, I'll have to take the steps to serve it.
Oh, here's some that.
Orange County. I don't finish my report, but it is.
Oh, and I need your signature on
I'm also proposing to the town next week to be the town nurse as well, so. Paid position. Volunteer.
Have I not looked these over?
You've looked over, you always make recommendations. This one. All right. I need that piece. Yeah, thank you. You can hire on. I think we're on. I'm nervous about, I think I really need to talk to somebody about what happened or not. They're gonna go, you know, they are. I can tell you, and all the talk.
What do you, when do you want to meet, Tuesday?
Sure.
Tuesday.
Okay, and I just have to post it as just like a special meeting.
Really quickly, I probably want you to know this stuff. So there's 30 30 days, it's not 30 days from right this minute, or 30 days, it's 30 days from when they can serve.
Winning C.
I don't know, that's what I saw online, winning six, so. I need your signatures.
Yeah.
That's easy. Is it for launch?
That's why I'm calling you later tomorrow.
So what happens, Maddie, right? Yeah, he was a teacher at South Carolina. This is just for a grant, so we can even send it.
Right.
So that apparently I don't hear.
Right.
John,
Yeah.
can you read this?
I think you can do one property, okay, but in it you will explain.
That's 23,
yeah.
Thank you.
And
Well, we never got a road report.
I can give you one.
They must be going through the sand though, because all those little hitters,
Oh, yeah.
every day they're coming.
You want a road report? Or
Only if there's something.
They've been filling ruts because they're overweight.
Is there any reason that?
His reason for jumping up his budget by around $50,000 was number one, diesel. And number two, the new grader, he went and got new oil filter for
I
it.
don't know exactly what's been going on.
And cutting edges for labor, he used all the existing maintenance money. $4,000.
Taking a little while as always.
Oil filter. Yeah. Thomas's truck went down to Lebanon
And
because it wasn't making heat,
some of the properties.
and fan control module was gone.
I think we
So
started
it's
paying the
$4,000.
taxes and.
Just all
Like,
that.
you know, tax bill, it's about-
I think also it's just the-
There's only one in the eastern
And then
United
just-
States,
They
got that coming. And,
What is it we want?
the fan control module. And, I guess that's about it.
I guess there's been a lot of.
What do we cover for TQ?
Nationwide problem. Everybody's on.
Got a new truck.
That's not this situation, but everybody. I just wanted to mention that before next, yeah. Have you talked to Chris? I don't know her name. She's a community nurse. I don't know. Yes, she's gonna be on. Okay, do we know what time? Because I haven't yet, but I'll put you on. Okay, perfect. Yeah, I don't know what. I don't even actually know what her presentation is, like, it's
Yeah,
kind of like,
It sounded like it was gonna be like half an hour.
really.
Yeah, I was like, okay, that's fine.
Cause I talked to the town of Sharon and they like pretty much said to talk to her, but there has to be like an easy, like,
The town of Sharon, well, one of you sent me, the job description.
yeah.
So I have that.
I'm like, I feel like at the end of the day, it's like, where do you get your funds to pay for your town nurse? That's what we wanna know, like, that's it.
Yeah.
So that we can
Exactly.
figure it out. And they were talking about the funding from, today from, Jess was talking about that. I was like, well, what about a public health nurse? I mean, like.
Exactly, yeah.
All right, guys, we
See you later.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
Get us out of the truck and goes,
And you guys all got that, note from Cal Hemingway's lawyer.
I didn't have an attachment with it. so-
Oh, it didn't have an attachment?
Not on mine.
Oh,
No.
It just kind of.
Right.
I just said, here it is.
Here it is, I didn't attach it.
um, this is the original. I didn't know Mike was coming in person, so. But he hired an attorney. He
So what do
wants,
we have to do to?
they want you to, yeah, they want you to discontinue the trail and that he doesn't believe it was legally established from what they can tell, that it is appropriate to discontinue it because it has limited public utility, causes a nuisance, they'll serve the public good.
So would they take us potentially to court?
Yes, they said if we did it, put it on our select board agenda and discontinue it, they would litigate it.
I was driving on that road before Cal come into me.
So just another thing to add.
And begin, John, at the rear board.
Yeah, yeah,
It didn't distract me.
they can sue each other.
The old stuff.
It is, yes. Okay, next meeting.
What is this? Soccer reference is the September 22nd. Tunbridge Legal Road. Soccer?
Should be
What is
soccer.
that?
I use the dictate thing, so I just.
Soccer?
Yeah, I just read my notes and it writes it down, so it obviously picked up soccer for soccer.
You said non-accent.
Yeah, soccer. Tuesday, 7 PM, budget, next meeting. And the following Tuesday, the 28th.
Costs us almost $26,000 in that same, but that material haul Randolph Center.
For no reason.
Yep. 25, 860.
You would get that here.
I could, but it takes longer.
Do you want me to take the budget stuff and hold on to it for next week?
Actually, tickets, so we're going to go to $47.
Is Pickett one or two keys?
Two,
Two?
I think, yeah, I think it's two. Yeah, it cost us $25,000 for a month, leave the city of town.
Yeah.
Do we get $25,000 worth?
Oh, I know, we get $30,000 in value. Big much.
Or they wouldn't have charged us.
Well, when you say Pickett, he believes he's done hauling the sand double check. Is it Pickett or Rodney?
Right.
Big variance.
Did you buy this calendar in 1991?
That's fine.
What'd you say?
It's just pictures of
They're all like famous paintings of these
Yeah.
in the Wiener Dog cartoons.
Oh.
early spring and the first wiener dog butts served in
That's
1937.
your garden.
Yeah.
Unfinished.
My favorite is when the dog's in the car and he's gonna go get food.
Oh.
He's all excited.
I drove up here. Right?
Have a good time.
Oh my God, I didn't realize. I thought it was just gonna go for a leisurely December drive, not mud season, yeah.
No, you're on a legal trail.
Yeah. Why am I supposed to be on here?
They're gonna lose some battle on it. They don't know. Just a point of interest, we figured it up today, we took in $27,000 worth of dump tickets, or not dollars, worth of money for dump tickets, and it cost us $53,000 to run the dump.
Oh, I also got budget stuff from Mitch Taylor from Casella saying that we need to charge for recycling. It's because for how much we pay
Yeah.
in order to even break even.
Yeah.
We
Oh,
should
yeah.
be paying, charging $2.50 a bag.
Yeah.
Do we technically have to have a transfer station in Tunbridge?
No, you don't have to. Do you?
I don't think
I
so.
mean, you could shut it down and everybody has to get themselves,
Right.
or
Or
take
throw
it
it
to
over
a
the
vessel,
bank.
or throw it over the bank. That's what I do.
I
You know,
mean, why do you think I got that new woodwork?
you know, who's in there?
No, because a lot of towns don't have, you know, Braintree doesn't, Brookfield doesn't.
And you just fire one by the month, and then all recycles.
Exactly. I think in the old ones you can do that, this new one is.
From the landfills.
Yeah.
They have to run over.
Exactly.
When Lori and I were first together, I lived at the farmhouse, and she was helping me clean out the shed one day, and had this trailer parked outside, there chucking old boards out and stuff, and making the burn pile, and I threw something plastic out there, she said, wait a minute, that won't burn. I said, you want that?
Yes, it will.
She made me right.
I was thinking, I was hunting, I went back through my grandfather's property when I was back home. And, he dug a hole out back and we got done changing oil in the tractor, we just went out and dumped it in that hole.
Yeah.
Betsy, I do
Couple days
apologize that I have my
Yeah.
back to you. I'm not trying to shut you up. Did you get a deer, Mike? before you
No,
went
I
right
didn't.
up?
No,
Did you hear that?
well, I had a lot of fun because it was really nice weather.
Did you hear that your best administrative assistant ever got a 7-pointer?
Really?
Yeah, your best AA ever,
Where did that come from?
up the hill.
Yeah.
Oh, that wasn't low. Not even go, yeah.
Crossbow or rifle?
First
time you use a bow, you know?
No, that's how I've gotten all my beef, but, I take that back, I got one with a gun, but
7-pointer.
yeah,
How much did it weigh?
only 124 pounds.
Oh.
It was running pretty thin, but.
That-
Read every Joe.
Yeah. But it was only my second night out, because, you know, of course, Deb goes out all the time.
Second night?
Yeah,
Is that even white?
you know what I mean. So I went out for a little bit and just so happened, I said, I gotta tell Mike, he would be,
Yeah. So was it the shop that went up by Anthony's old place on Spring Lane?
it wasn't, no, that was not me.
9:30 at night.
No, I hear that was a different fella.
Well, he
Yeah,
planted
she
to
shot
somebody
by
else.
the whole beach,
Yeah.
where it's going.
Yeah.
Light was blinding.
No.
So Simon Bradford wondered, yeah, what was happening with the transfer station policy, because he noticed it wasn't on the news, so. He was
Yeah,
had concerns about this, how two bid thing is, you have to get it with everything,
yeah, that's what John Thursby said today too.
so we should be careful before we adopt.
Yeah, somebody had, so I had posted in just the unofficial Tunbridge Facebook group and just stated that like I was taking some time off for Christmas and, you know, like I sometimes try to post hours in there. Then people were commenting, asking where like, if I could post policies and stuff in there, but I just posted the link to the Selectboard page and I said that this is where you can find the information. Because I don't think that we should be posting that on an unofficial Tunbridge page where it would just be up for public debate, but people won't be coming to the meetings, it'll just be. So I said, here's the link, you're welcome to look at it, but I'm not gonna post like
That's a good way.
the document here for everybody to criticize, but not.
People debate things a lot. You know.
Yes, exactly, so.
Is he doing,
I've heard of it.
is he doing snow removal?
Yes, he is, actually. He needs to do it. He did it once.
What's happening with the whole town hall?
Can we build it? Yeah.
He's still going to make arrangements with Judy, with Mike to actually look at the bottom of that tank. So
Yeah.
he was open to do that.
You're gonna
Mike and Judy are off the hook for filling with their.
Yeah.
propose, was it?
I do, yeah.
Oh, did you send it to my email?
No, I have it right here. I can give it to you if you want to keep it to look at it for, and then for next meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I want to do. But you only got one?
No, I have 3.
Well, what's the deal?
You said we weren't gonna talk about it. So I said, okay, I'll hold on to it.
Thank you. Very valuable assistance.
Yes, I know. This is the budget, proposed budget. Which, next, no, this is the comparative one. We'll discuss it, but it's, and maybe Becky can help too, but she helped me figure out what I'm gonna be doing for like maternity leave and then like also budgeting and like what I would be getting paid with taking 2 months out plus.
You don't get paid.
Budget, right, no, well, exactly, that's what she's saying, like, we're gonna reduce that, but whatever, so I can explain it next time, but it's.
Betsy, you know anything about North Tunbridge store? Because that's why I thought he's coming in, not many people. This last meeting, or she said,
I know that, let's see. Mike,
yeah,
regarding the lead department and everything, Mike had been lead certified, but it had lapsed. He got recertified. He has done the painting and the lead department. I think that they're all satisfied with what's happened. I think she sent them pictures. Trying to remember what she's told me. And she just has to, Maurice, the fire marshal's done his inspection. She's trying to get that information and then she needed to do, just finalize, redo the apartment inspection.
those seem to be moving ahead.
Yeah. She may have already done it.
Right, yeah.
She's too fast for me.
On TQ. Plan and legal trails, budgeting. What about roads, anything? We're just ready for winter.
Ready for spring. Actually.
Ready.
At least I am.
What else is there?
That's mine.
What else are we
Mine, I let you borrow.
Yeah, what you want,
A couple hours.
Mass handling? Anything else? Remember, notable? You gotta do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is my really special valuable AA.
That was like how heavy?
hired somebody else.
Yeah.
We
What?
hired somebody else.
Yeah, sure. No,
Oh.
it's me, obviously.
Um, Kevin Rogers wanted to know if they wanted to have them on, to keep delivering, whether it's gonna be automatic or roll call. And I assumed it was automatic.
Yeah, let's do automatic and have him keep doing it.
Right, okay. So I'll call Kevin. and his price will probably be a little bit higher, but. everybody's gonna be living.
If we don't run out of oil, it won't be.
Yeah.
I gotta sign that.
It was short.
Forever, so I waited until this morning
That's some of the best.
to do the billing for that. And I was like, oh, it won't take very long. Took me almost 4 hours to do all of those.
Yeah, because we went 3 weeks and this time.
What's for dinner tonight?
I know what it wasn't, now it's gonna be peanut butter sandwiches.
You wanted to see flavor, they call that.
Oh, Luigi's.
Yeah.
Butternut, no. Acorn squash, cut it in half and cook it.
Yeah.
And get some fresh sausage, and just throw a pig
Right.
sausage.
Oh, really?
Sausage on it, and put the old Parmesan cheese to it and butter.
That sounds really good.
What do you have?
I think it's frozen pizza night.
That'd be the name. Other than the peanut butter sandwich.
That's just the appetizer,
Yeah,
the peanut butter sandwich.
oh.
It's a two-course.
Exactly, and
Yeah.
then frozen pizza's next.
Anyway, I guess I just go with it.
We need a stamp.
Becky has one.
Yeah.
Oh.
You know-
Gary Mullins then?
Yeah, she has a Gary Newman signature.
You still have a page, you sell?
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I accept that motion.
Okay.
We'll get power.
Where's your driver?
Oh, that's what she's saying.
If you're not healthy, it's best to hang around when it's health.
Yeah.
Ribbon has become the driver.
Oh, I don't.